Hello there, and welcome to Gaming with Passion. My name is Christian, and I have two lovely hosts with me that we want to introduce you to our new project that we decided would be good because honestly, we're tired of how the landscape of gaming has been going between developers and even the players themselves. So I have my friends Dylan and my friend Connor. Please introduce yourself, boys.
Hello there, it's me. My name is Dylan. I am mostly the tech geek behind everything and the racing nerd. I love anything and everything that happens to go vroom vroom kabang. And I am also the furry shit of the group. So yes, send all the high quality if my way. And of course, we're also joined by Connor.
Fucking Christ, dude. How's it going? I am the Irish one of the group whose internet runs off fucking two turbo baked potatoes.
So we came up with this idea, and we've had it for a little bit now, that we wanted to talk about the gaming landscape, new and old, and maybe stories break, all that. But we also want to go back and talk about things that we didn't even think it'd fairly shake, or even talk about what we're enjoying at the moment. This episode, we will be diving into games that are good but disappointed us. So we picked out a couple games that I think we could have good discussion on and all that. But I also have some honestly good news. Not a whole lot this week. One major story and a couple smaller stories. But we'll start off by seeing how everyone's doing today and how their week's gone and everything. We'll start over with Connor instead of Dylan at the moment. Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, my week's been grand. Ireland's been great with its bipolar weather, with being sunny, then rain, then sunny, then rain. But yeah, no. Other than that, I'm doing pretty good, lads.
Fair, that's fair. Dylan, how's your week going?
I survived.
Damn it. I hate
I
you.
mean, I know you live in Florida, buddy, but they need a little more than that.
I survived a grueling battle against a storm known as Milton. And then my boss came into work and said, guess what? They're sending 2 weeks worth of inventory to do over the weekend with a quarter of the crew. Besides that, I had a really fun time.
That's great, buddy. I'd love to be railed by a game named Milton too. Wait, what? So, we can start this off anyway. If you guys want, we can go ahead and start doing some news, and then we can break into our bigger subjects towards that, and then we can end with what we've been playing.
Alright.
I think that sounds good.
So I have a couple news stories. I've got one about Metaphor, something interesting going on with Tomb Raider, Microsoft having to deal with bringing some games somewhere else, so that's always fun, and something having to do with Pokemon. I'm going to start off with my Metaphor. This is just a little fun one I found. Metaphor was inspired by Lord of the Rings for its world aesthetic and ideology, it sounds like. So in the article, it is an interview with Hashino during the Xbox podcast. Hashino explains that developers were looking at traditional fantasy culture at the start of development, mentioning that The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien specifically, they were looking to see not only what traditional fantasy was, but how, why, and other inspirations that made the genre. He later states that Hashino noted that as they were trying to bring this aspect into the game, the more they realized that they couldn't make the game that was in the same line of traditional fantasy, saying that it wouldn't feel original to the developers. Hashino also said that sticking strictly to conventions of the traditional fantasy genre would lack the originality that defined Atlas. So what it sounds like to me is they were looking at inspirations to see what they could come up with, and they were sticking a little too close to the inspirations instead of doing what they typically do, which is bring a unique fantasy world to life, if it's in high fantasy or however they were looking at it. But it looks like they were looking at this to see if they could come up with something unique, and accidentally were staying a little too close to it. What do you guys read off of it?
Well, I would say, funnily enough, this kind of bleeds into what I've been noticing a lot with the industry in terms of how a lot of people are wanting developers to be more original in their works instead of just remaking the same thing over and over again. And it's ironic how Atlas, trying to make something original by dissecting the genre, ended up almost accidentally making something that would be very back to roots basic instead of the originality of works they're known for. And it's interesting that they caught that so early on and pivoted.
That is completely fair. I think it's definitely a unique look behind the eyes of the developers that are making these projects. And it's nice to honestly see a story like this where they were looking for inspiration but realized it wasn't being true to who they were for originality. I do think that's really unique, and I think it's really fun, honestly, because it gives you a little bit more perspective on how they approach certain things, honestly. What do you think, Connor?
Ward, sorry. I do think it's good on getting that perspective on, I'm sorry, my brain shut down for a second. I do think it's good getting the perspective on that, because not only is it a perspective on gaming, I forgot what I was gonna say.
You're good, buddy. Honestly, it rings true to my ears a little bit reading an article like this where it's a developer realizing that they are not wanting to, they want to create something original with inspiration behind other products, but also stay true to who they are. I mean, just as a weird example, but it reminds me of something that people, when they make something, don't realize they should be staying either close to what they're supposed to be representing or come up with something original. For a really good example, just look at the show Velma. It takes a known IP, and instead of using what's given to it, it tries to reinvent itself, but it doesn't understand the source material to reinvent itself in a good light. Same with the Halo show. It wanted to completely change up things without actually going and understanding fundamentally what makes the product they're making so unique and even tied to the original source. Instead, they wanted to create something original, which I think failed to meet the material, whereas Metaphor wanted to create something original with ideology from other material, or Ida. It's like they looked at Lord of the Rings and thought, let's learn about high fantasy before we make a high fantasy game, and then they realized that if they weren't careful, they couldn't be original with what they wanted to create, that way it would take too much inspiration. But I really found this article interesting in the sense of it just gives a little bit deeper back into the development behind Metaphor, but also how Atlas works, especially with this being Studio Zero's actual first game with that name, even though it's made from Persona 3, 4, and 5 creators. So I do think that is really interesting. Do you guys have anything more to say on it?
I will say, and it makes me excited to play Metaphor when I get around to get it, though, knowing its inspiration.
That's fair. I'll be upfront and honest. I have been playing it a little bit. It is an absolute, from what I've played so far, about 5 hours in the game right now, and it's absolutely fantastic. But I'll talk more about that when we get to what we've been playing and what's been going on, what we've been experiencing here recently. So we'll move on to the next topic. I've got one for Tomb Raider. So, Tomb Raider just got a remaster of 1 through 3 this year from Aspyr. And they just announced that they are remastering 4 through 6. So this is really interesting. It's coming February 14th, I think. Yeah, February 14th. So Aspyr is bringing us Tomb Raiders 4 through 6, so we are getting further in the series, so that is nice to see. It just shows that we are getting, thankfully, games are being preserved in multiple different ways. With us just getting the Silent Hill 2 remake, that was nice to see, and then now we're getting Tomb Raider 4 through 6. We've got the Gex trilogy, and then Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 through 2 coming out this year. So honestly, it's really nice to see that. I didn't see much on it. It's just saying that it can be pre-ordered right now. It comes out February 14th, 2025 for PS4, PS5, Switch, Xbox One, Series X and S, and PC. So it is definitely nice to see that they're going to be $30 for this collection. Any comments?
It makes me glad that older games like that are getting the love they deserve later in the future again. Because there are so many games like I'm not saying Tomb Raider didn't get the love it deserved because it's a really good series, but there are so many games that went under the radar that never got the love they deserve, and it makes me happy that they're remastering older games now more often.
Yeah, I mean, especially that, and especially you bring up the Gex. Oh my god, that's just deep cut. But also remember that I believe they remade a while ago some of the Bubsy games. Even the Bubsy got new stuff. Like
Did they?
I
Uh,
believe so.
I think Bubsy here. I'll check it real quick.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if this keeps happening, we're really gonna be gaming back in the Clinton years.
God damn it!
Let's see. There's the Perfect Collection. Not too sure. I'll have to look into that one.
Yeah, I don't remember. I
But
know
it-
I know it had a new game come out like relatively recently, surprisingly.
it had some new games, but I think you are right that I think the first few games are getting remastered and brought back up. So I do think that's the case. I can't remember.
I
think
just
Limited Run's doing that. Speaking of Limited Run, they actually are bringing us Yakuza 0 and Kiwami physically. So it is getting a PS4 physical again. But what's notable is Xbox and Switch are getting Kiwami, and Xbox is getting 0 also. And from what I saw, let me just pull up Limited Runs real quick. They are doing the 7 games, and they actually are going to have a banner that stretches across. So it's going to be 0 through 6, and they're going to have a slipcase that does makes a picture, but also I think this dragon on the side will also match up with the rest.
don't need it. I don't need it. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
as-
need it.
just see if I can get it pull up. But no, so we'll go ahead and move on to our next topic. So it looks like Microsoft is happening to bring some Xbox games to another platform. It looks like it's going to be Android itself. Sarah Bond actually put out a tweet, and it says the court's ruling to open up Google's mobile store in the U.S. will allow more choice and flexibility. Our mission is to show more players to play on more devices, so we are thrilled to share that starting November, players will be able to play and purchase Xbox games directly from the Xbox app on Android, which is slightly nice to see because that means now the Xbox app will make it easier, hopefully, to buy products and even stream games on your phone better. Because they are working forward on trying to make streaming better on multiple devices. Xbox streaming has come a long way, honestly. It is really nice to see. So I think this is really interesting. I have a Logitech G Cloud that I do stream a little bit on with my Xbox. So what do you guys think?
I mean, I would say so far, like, I've never really been a big adopter of the game streaming stuff, but I have been keeping up with the field in general, and just seeing the massive strides they made over the past years have been amazing. Because I remember the days of, like, what was it, Game Live, something like that. That was essentially the predecessor to the Google Stadia that failed horribly, and then like Nvidia adopted them, I believe, and then Nvidia said F that and made their own platform, and then now we had Microsoft doing that instead, and it's been pushed so heavily and so hard. It's actually awesome seeing that sector of the industry succeed when a lot of people had doubts so far.
So that is a really good thing to bring up. Stadia is something I was actually against. I have become a little bit more open to streaming. The reason I had bought the Logitech G Cloud to test it out and see how well it worked after getting my hands hooked on all of this now PC portable gaming. As you guys, both of you know, I am a physical collector, so I am very much tied down to the idea that digital gaming is not the best, but it does make things easier. I just hate that it isn't owning your product, it's just having the right to play your product. I mean, GOG just threw shade at Steam, if you guys saw, about owning your products, because GOG
Yeah.
literally lets you download the installer itself, not just having the license to play the game, and then it'll open up the like Steam to launch the game. You can literally just launch the game from itself. So you do buy the right to have the game. Now it's still kind of tied behind GOG itself, because it has to, after you purchase it, as long as it's downloaded, you're fine. You still have to go and download it again if you delete it. So that's unique, but with how they're doing it and how accessible they're making it, I do appreciate it. It makes gaming itself, for how, what people forget young gaming is. I mean, movies have been around for almost 100 years, if not longer. Gaming is still in its infancy in a lot of ways, so there's new things being thrown at it all the time. As you've seen with how games are trying to create hubs, like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, they're trying to create these hubs for all their games, to try to make launching each game easier or harder depending on how they made it. So I think that is really unique. Connor, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I do think the way they're making it more accessible to people is really good. I think I haven't had too many problems with the whole idea of streaming. Do I think the fact that certain companies are saying that it's the main thing to focus on? No, because an example of this would be what Ubisoft said about gamers should get used to not owning their games. Because people still buy physical. There's still an advantage to also having physical, because it takes up less space on your gaming device as well.
Right. Games have gotten a lot bigger. I mean, even if you just look at Call of Duty, one game usually on it's about 100 to 150 gigs. I mean, with Black Ops 6 coming out, it's clear as day that you'll have to make sacrifices if you want to play it, but having the ability to stream these games eliminates some of that stress on what you want to keep downloaded and play. In this day and age where gaming is a little bit more complex in how things are played. If that's all you guys got, we can move to the next topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one of the big topics. Right now, this broke today. So, Game Freak has been hacked. And
Oh boy.
it looks like they had gotten the code name for next gen, Nintendo's next gen console. It supposedly was purportedly called, I'm gonna say this is Ounce, O-U-N-C-E.
How's it spelled?
Oh,
O-U-N-C-E.
O-U-N-C-E? Yeah, it's probably
I think I
ounce
know
or
what-
once.
Yeah.
I think I know what he's talking about, because I think I literally got a notification for this morning for a video of it.
They also got a code name of the unannounced 10th generation Pokemon game, reportedly Gaia, and the code name of Legends EA. It looks like that was called Ikaku.
Interesting.
So the code name of the two versions of the 10th generation Pokemon game are part of a leak K and N, which may relate to Nintendo's intention to release it both on Switch and its successor as a cross-gen title. So this is an interesting one. A Pokemon game codename Synapsis is also reportedly mentioned. This unannounced game is said to be co-developed with another studio, with some reports indicating it's some sort of Pokemon MMO. It looks like they also had source code for DS titles Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black 2, and White 2. They have been reportedly released, resulting in stolen, unused assets of Pokemon and even game music.
The only thing I'm hearing is ROM hacking and modding those games now is going to be so much easier for, in my opinion, the most beautiful looking Pokemon gen.
Right.
Yeah,
It
sure.
also looks like plot relating to the unreleased sequel of 2019's Detective Pikachu, supposedly called The Great Detective Pikachu, was leaked. It was reportedly directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts. He did The Kings of Summer and Kong Skull Island. it had a planned release date in 2024.
Hmm.
So we don't know what's going on there, but that was also part of the leak.
On this Nintendo Direct, next Detective Pikachu movie released in 5 hours.
Be a hell of a Nintendo move right there. Hey guys, we kind of screwed up. How about you take a movie
Just
from us? You want to help us support the Power lawsuit guys?
Emergency Direct.
Oh, that would be
Yeah,
wild.
Hey, let's just show off the Switch too. It's already been leaked enough that we probably have to.
With Alarmo integration.
Also, I'm gonna have to look into the stuff for the 10th generation stuff though, because I think that's what I got the notification for mostly.
Yeah,
And I've been curious about that.
It looks like this was a pretty big leak, not only just for Pokemon, but we got more information about what the fandom has called the Switch 2 now. So this is really interesting. Probably means we'll probably get a direct sometime soon, hopefully, because Nintendo's probably going to want to just go ahead and announce this thing, but who knows? Because as of right now, I mean, there's no speculation on this system being made anymore. It is a hard fact that we know about it. It's just a matter of fact, can Nintendo land the landing with all the leaks? I do think it's possible. Let's just hope they don't do a Wii U on us and not know how to market it, because the Switch was marketed really well. So I do think they need to pull the trigger at some point on announcing this thing. I know they're trying to beat the lifetime sale of the PS2, but I think they could do that and also announce the Switch 2 and lower the prices of the Switch. I don't see Nintendo doing that, but I do think if they want to do it, they're going to have to do something fast, because people are now either getting impatient waiting on this thing, or the magic of them showing it off isn't going to be as magical the more information that breaks about this thing through leaks. Any comments on this thing?
Yeah, which is very true. I mean, Nintendo wasn't really fully hiding it to begin with. Like they've told that, yeah, they're working on something. We just can't show the details right now. They already confirmed that, yeah, that they've been working on the console several times. They just aren't able to announce details yet.
Yeah, but they also have to be careful of when, like of choosing when to announce it, because if they take too long, as Christian said, the magic's gonna be gone, and people just are gonna be like, "Hey, it's finally announced," but like people are gonna get tired of waiting eventually.
Yeah, but like, look at how the Alarmo never got leaked.
Right. That is actually pretty accurate. I actually think, and I know me and you, Dylan, share the same opinion on the PS5 Pro, which we'll probably talk about that when it releases, to be honest. But it's interesting to me, because if I was Nintendo, if I wanted to give a company a middle finger, I would announce on the day of release of the PS5 Pro, I would go, hey, guess what? Here's what the Switch 2 looks like. Here's its release date. Here's the price. I would do that. It would feel like a big middle finger, because this is a new console rather than, a new console rather than an improved console. So they could have a really unique way of doing this. I don't know if they will, because Nintendo is slowly warming back up to Sony, and vice versa. So I don't know if they would do that, but I would think that would be an extremely good marketing ploy in order to build up high. It's like, oh, our console isn't $700. It's also a new console, and it's going to have improved hardware in it that is going to not only play your older Switch games better, but also look at all these new games coming to it.
I mean,
whereas right now, Sony only has shown Ghost of Yotai, that I do believe that Nintendo could pull a fast one and do better, but with them having Lego Horizon on the lack of a pun, but Horizon, I don't know if that would be a wise choice because of that relationship now.
True. I mean, and even with the backwards compatibility for the Switch games, it's probably very likely they're going to be building it off the Switch architecture. Considering they spent a lot of time developing that OS and architecture, it's definitely going to be an evolution of that. So it's possible that it's highly likely the Switch is going to be backwards compatible. Very, very highly likely.
So with the comments they have been making, now the question is it going to be physically backwards compatible or just digitally? Because I do think it's going to be digitally since they are carrying over the Nintendo ID that they have created for the Switch. So that means I do think digitally it will be. The question is, will it have a separate card slot or will it be like the 3DS and have the same card slot, but the Switch 2 cartridge slot be a little bit bigger or have a little bit nub or something in order to differentiate itself from the other version, if that makes sense.
Now it uses UMDs. What?
That would be a wild idea. Hey, you want a little disc in a cartridge? Here you go, you bastard. Eat my ass. Nintendo does their own things now. You guys wanted a cartridge? Well, we'll give you a cartridge and a disc. Have you ever seen the GameCube?
I could see them doing it as either they just use the same size cartridge as well, but also a second slot would be nice for physical Switch games to run. It would also remind me of I forget which version of the DS did this, but there was a version that ran Game Boy games, if you remember.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that was the DS Lite.
It was the DS Lite and the OG brick DS. Both of those had the Game Boy Advance slot plus the DS marker. I was actually thinking about that when I was speaking of it because this wouldn't be Nintendo's first rodeo doing that. So.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, they also did that with the. Well, they didn't do that with the Wii. The Wii just had that built in because it was a disk drive, and it literally just straight up had a GameCube architecture chip inside of it.
No, most definitely, and technically you could classify the Wii U as the same way.
Yeah, but that one just ran off pure emulation.
Yes and no, because it's still certain Wii U games still required the Wii sensor, so it was built-in hardware. I do think the Wii U not only was just a new console, but an upgraded hardware to the Wii, and I think that's what hurt it because it was both integrated.
True. Also, I was gonna say, if they do end up doing the whole dual slot thing, oh my god, I would love if we go back to the old shenanigans they had on the DS games, to where they had the Game Boy game predecessor going into the next game would unlock certain stuff or cause special events to happen. I want those shenanigans back.
That's completely fair.
About that.
Yeah, I think it was I forgot what game was it that if you plugged it into, it was one of the Pokemon games, I believe, that if you plugged it into the Game Boy slot, it would activate a special event, I think in Pokemon Ranger or Diamond and Pearl. I forgot.
So in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and Platinum, they actually, if you had any of the Game Boy Advance ones in, you could go to a special what are they called? Safari Zone. And it was at the bottom of the map, and you would be able to catch Pokemon from that version that you caught. You could transfer the Pokemon into that Safari Zone to catch.
Yeah,
so, say you wanted to get Rayquaza from Pokemon Ruby, Emerald, or Sapphire, you could do that through that Safari Zone. So, I don't remember what Ranger did, but Nintendo, I think that would be a cool idea because I feel like that would tap into nostalgia of how games used to work. If you guys remember back on GameCube, what was it? It was A Link to the Past, and then if you connected it to the GameCube, you could do Four Swords Adventure.
Oh, that's
if I remember
right.
correctly.
Actually, now I think about it, Nintendo's been doing stuff like this ever since their almost inception.
N64, yeah. And then if you remember, they also had the Super Game Boy for the SNES. So this isn't going to be, depending on how they do this, it could harken back to how old school they were. So I do think that would be fun because I think the thing that Nintendo needs right now, since they have built up so much love and trust again after the incident that was the Wii U, I do think they need to harken back to what made people fall in love with them, and that's how interconnected their games can be in multiple different ways. Having things like Link to the Past and Four Swords Adventure, and being able to do that would be unique. Or even like having this an extra Safari zone, like from how Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum did it, because it felt like your older games were still valuable on that new generation of hardware.
They can 100% easily do it as well, because as I said, it's not their first time doing it.
No, most definitely. So
I mean, and then again, they did sort of bring that back with the amiibos to an extent, just not really in a very integrated way. Like, yeah, they were integrated in every game, but not really cross-integrated.
So the problem with the amiibos was that while they are a novel concept, they mainly only worked for Smash. Only certain ones had the ability to be used on other hardware, and if they were programmed for that hardware. So yes, amiibos did have a functionality that felt worthwhile as a purchase. They were also a gimmick that wasn't like how Nintendo did with older games. You still had to buy these things, and even then, it wasn't a guarantee that they would work on their own games. They might only work for Smash, which could lead to some frustration if you were wanting them for the novelty of using them on their games and not just as a collectible.
Yeah, it's still wild to me because I've had this idea for a while. Game Freak, make the Pokemon Trainer amiibos work to allow you to transfer your Pokemon from one title to another if they're in the Pokédex.
I mean, to be fair, Game Freak still hasn't given us a Coliseum or Gale of Darkness remake, and probably never will because it wasn't made by them. So I don't expect them to put the effort in. This is a straight call out to you, Game Freak. It's like, listen to your fans. I don't think Scarlet and Violet deserves all the hate, or Sword and Shield deserves all the hate. But the problem is that with how Game Freak has handled Pokemon, and how, if you look at games that weren't made by Game Freak, so like I said, Gale of Darkness and Coliseum, two beloved games that are sadly $200 and you need a GameCube or a Wii to play them, they're stuck on old hardware, fans really love them, and they were amazing concepts that reinvented the Pokemon genre, because it wasn't your typical Pokemon adventure, plus it didn't have like typical gym battles, and it was a genuinely funny and dark game at times. Whereas Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield took ideas that those games created early on and acted like they were new ideas. That's my whole issue with how Pokemon and Game Freak has handled it. I don't think they're bad games. I think the problem is Game Freak has been so slow on upgrading how their franchise works, and while fans want something like what they were shown a Pokemon game could be, and we're slowly getting there, but the problem is it feels like it's almost too late because Game Freak's dragging their legs, and I think a good way to get back in the fan base is to re-release some of the classics like they have been, but also games they didn't create. So I think not only would the two GameCube games be a great way to bring forward HD ports, $60, I mean, fans will pay for it, especially Pokemon fans, but also bring back Pokemon Ranger, bring back Pokemon Conquest.
I was just about to say those.
I mean, in all honesty, it'd be great. I mean, we saw the work with Bandai with Pokken Tournament, which was a great take on Tekken and Pokemon having a crossover. So, I personally think not only... hopefully this opens their eyes to not only Nintendo needs better infrastructure so they don't get hacked again. Sadly, it will happen, but the problem is this was a legitimately hard hack on them, especially on... I mean, it confirmed that we're probably getting the 10th gen remake pretty soon. And also, that we're getting ZA pretty soon also. We kind of figure 2025. I personally think it'll either be a launch game or at latest a winter game. But I don't see any later than winter.
Just to ask, when was Scarlet and Violet released before I say something?
Scarlet and Violet was released... that would have been 2022? Christmas time? Or was
Okay.
it 2023? No, because we got the DLC in 2023, if I remember correctly.
Okay, it was the DLC I was thinking of. Yeah.
I
They
think. Let me look it up real quick.
Geez, that's actually gone almost 2 whole years without a mainline.
Yeah, because I was gonna say because
I think it was 2023.
Sorry. They usually have yearly stuff for Pokemon games, if I'm not mistaken. I could be just fucking wrong, but like
I mean,
I
I
think-
will say I've noticed this with how they're
It was
doing
November
the...
18, 2022. Meaning we got the DLC. Let me look at the DLC release dates.
I think the DLC was
The DLC was 2023.
yeah, because that's when I bought it and that's when I started.
Yeah, so December 14th was the last day for the DLC 2, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it was like end of Christmas. Oh yeah, no, I remember now because there was the whole thing of the game wiping your entire data.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because we got the announcement of ZA this year, so we actually haven't had a Pokemon release in 2 years, not counting the DLC.
Yeah. Well, the DLC you could kind of make an argument for it because it is essentially a whole new expansion.
And we go
With
back
all new
to
area.
Unova.
Actually, I think Detective Pikachu. So yeah, Detective Pikachu would have been the last release, which was 2023. It was October 6th, 2023. So Game Freak has had quite a bit of time to work on ZA, and we know it is the team that did Legends Arceus, so they have already got a good basis on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say now
But-
now that you think about it, the A team has had a while to cook on stuff than what they usually
Yeah.
do.
Scarlet,
Get the feeling, and this is just me thinking, I get the feeling people hating on Scarlet and Violet could have caused them to wait for longer for the next mainline game, so it's a bit more up to par.
Yeah, because everything else we've been getting has mostly been either done by B teams, such as the DLC stuff, or done by third party.
yeah. So it is definitely time for another Pokemon game in the traditional style. So with Next Legends, and it looks like we're going to be getting a remake after that. So I do think we'll
But-
have another year or two before we get a mainline game.
But who's making
From
the
the way it looks.
What I'm worried about is who's making the remake. Is it going to be main team or is it going to be Ilka again?
I don't know, and that's a great question. It could be multiple because we don't know who's working on. We don't know who's working on any of the other stuff because there's multiple teams. I mean, you had a team that works. You've got Natonic that works on Go. I can't remember who works on Mystery Dungeon.
Wasn't that just Koi Tecmo? No.
I'm not sure. I can look it up real quick if you want.
Yeah, I know it's not Konami. It's KT.
Because I know Cafe is made by the team that made Coliseum and Gale of Darkness.
That is
if I remember
wild.
I think that is the case. Let me look it up.
That
real quick.
is wild. The next release, Pokemon Cafe, bankruptcy.
Are you referring to the just Mystery Dungeon in general or the Rescue Team DX?
Mystery Dungeon in general, I believe.
Because it says Rescue Team DX was developed by Spike Chunsoft.
Really?
Okay, so let's see. What was the last game Genesis Sonority
Again,
made?
Spike Chunsoft,
Oh.
and people were complaining about Spike Chunsoft working on Sparking Zero, and oh my god, they can make good graphics after what happened with Jump Force.
Oh, most of the
Yeah,
Mystery
so
Dungeons.
Here's something interesting for you guys. So they made Pokemon Coliseum and Gale of Darkness, right? They did Trozium Battle Revolution,
What?
which is a terrible Wii game. They did Pokemon Shuffle and Cafe Remix. So they haven't done a actual good Pokemon game since the first two they did. So I would definitely think it would be interesting to see if they could do that.
I mean, the fact they still have the
But
dev team working for them, they can definitely remake Gale of Darkness for
yeah.
Coliseum.
Oh, they 100% could, but do they want to? Probably fucking not.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because what I'm seeing, because Battle Revolution was supposed to be a callback to Stadium, it just didn't feel as good as didn't feel as good as Stadium because there wasn't as much connectivity. It felt like, or modes. I might be remembering it wrong, but I don't remember enjoying it as much as Stadium.
I mean, it does have some character, though. There is, like, a lot of cool Easter eggs and stuff like that in the game.
Oh no, 100%. I will definitely say that, like, animation-wise and everything, it was down pat. I just feel like it was lacking in a lot of areas. Funny enough, it looks like IGN gave it a 5, which is really interesting to me because what's outstanding to me is they gave Concord a 7.
Brother, IGN ratings are fucking wild. You remember the
Oh,
Spider-Man 2 one, don't you?
oh no, yeah. Let's talk about IGN rating. So, don't know if you guys heard, Alien Isolation is actually getting a sequel after 10 years. So
I
this
do
is
know
really
about
nice
that.
to see. But let me pull up the IGN review because it's so actually funny. That game is beloved. I love that game. It is just a fantastic horror game. If you go to their IGN review, I kid you not, it is, and this was I think from Ryan Ryan McCaffrey, 5.9. It's a mediocre game. Uh, so
Hmm.
that's really interesting to me.
Hmm.
I do like Ryan. I think he is actually a pretty cool guy from what I've seen in interviews and everything. But like, I do think it's kind of funny to me that Alien Isolation, which is a really good game, and especially if you're an Alien fan, because you play as the daughter we only ever heard about from the second movie in the first movie. So that was really interesting.
I
But actually, here, let's have a little bit of fun. What did he give Cold War?
I already
He gave Cold War a 6. So that's
interest.
um
You
I
mean,
I already
with Cold War, you
did,
mean Call of Duty?
yep.
Oh, Jesus.
I already didn't take IGN ratings too seriously. I think the one that did it for me, though, as I said, I brought it up a second ago, was a Spider-Man 2 one. There's too much water. Huh?
Spider-Man 2. You mean Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire?
No. The Spider-Man 2 PS5. Oh, it was either Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 1. One of the critiques was that was too much water.
Let
I
me see
you can look into it.
review. Yeah, I'm looking into this. This is actually interesting.
You know what's funny? I was literally about to
shows
bring
that-
up. Yeah?
It shows that IGN has good people because like there are some really good reviews from IGN, but like then there's
There is.
things like this where I don't think, and this is why I think people don't understand where reviews aren't meant to be taken as the be all. You should definitely look into what you're looking for and look in other reviews to see if a game might fully fit you. Just don't go off one. These are opinions. So let me see. Let's look at the verdict.
It's better to get your own opinion than rather copy someone else's.
Yeah. Also, I was gonna say, the review that did me in was Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. Too much water.
It's almost like the Legendary's whole fucking thing is water.
No, it's almost like the whole theme of the game was look at all these amazing areas we can do now with our water mechanics.
From what I am seeing, I don't see. I do see where they said they made the open world bigger, but it didn't feel great. Just add it to the checklist.
I'll need to find it. It will take me some time. But do you not remember the video I sent you of the guy doing the skit for like the IGN employee saying there's too much water?
I don't, sadly.
There's too
But
much
this is
water.
interesting because it's like
It might be it might have been a video review. I don't remember fully, but I know I sent you I sent you a clip of it, and I was dying for so long.
It's almost like New
See.
York is somewhat of a peninsula. Watch me get flamed for not knowing what a peninsula is, even though I live in a state that's a freaking peninsula. I know what it means to have 3 areas that are wet and soggy.
Yeah, no, it's just like reading through this is interesting because it's like,
Okay, I did
It
find
definitely-
it looks like it's the first game,
first game.
and apparently it was more a critique on the puddles in the game not having enough water.
Oh yeah, the puddle gate. I remember
Yeah.
that.
What?
Yeah, that's
So,
what I
yeah,
was
no, I do
thinking.
remember that. Yeah. So it's actually really funny that was a big issue because I remember when the game was about to come out, people were mad that they one trailer the puddles looked absolutely immaculate, and then the next one it was just like, oh no, it's like lowered, and it was like, no, it's still really good. People just don't take things too far in a lot of ways.
We need to
So
bring
that's
back the
definitely
me versus water
interesting.
review guy.
But yeah, no, it's just like, I mean, but going back to Nintendo, it's just like let's look at something. Let's Pokemon. Let's see when the last one that hit in the good. So Scarlet, it got.
They deleted the review.
It's just gone.
So let me see.
What review?
Actually, a hot take. Anytime a game has DLC that adds to the main campaign in some way, it should get re-reviewed as a whole and get the score readjusted as a whole, but also have a separate score for if without DLC.
So let's see.
I can see where you're coming from with that, because if it's a DLC that's big enough that could be passed as its own little mini game, mini small
or
game,
something, yeah.
not mini game. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. That, like, example you could probably give of that is Elden Ring's DLC, because Elden Ring's DLC is that big, you could pass it off as literally just another game.
Oh no, most definitely, or even like a standalone expansion, making it essentially just its own thing, like its own game. So yeah, that's most definitely interesting. Okay, there's Scarlet and Violet. So Scarlet and Violet got a 6. If I go and
Yeah, or if a game receives enough updates that it resembles none, or at least very little of how it was on first release, the game should be re-reviewed towards the end of its life cycle.
right, no, most definitely.
Because an example of that, which would be a game, I'm talking about later, would be Unbound. Need for Speed Unbound.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, no, it's so interesting, and I mean, and this will lead on to our main topic. We can go straight into the main topic of what we wanted to talk about today, or we can start it off by what we've been playing. It's up to you guys.
I think what we've been playing would take less time.
Yeah.
More.
Okay, yeah, let's start it off, and I will start off with Dylan this time. So, buddy, what you been playing?
Dragon Ball! No, I'm not gonna make us cancel in the first episode. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero.
Okay, fair enough. What you been thinking about it?
Knowing how you guys know me, 100% worth the DLC expansion and the price to play early access and the overall price overall, because you guys know how I'm very icky about the price jump that video games has had as of late, unless a game really truly does deserve it, and this is one of those games that definitely deserves it in my eyes. I just love the characters, the animations, because I am an animation major, and oh my god, the Sakuga, and all that type of shit.
That is completely fair. Have you been playing anything else, to be honest?
Yeah, we've also, been playing Power World, and I've been playing some other games like Satisfactory that finally got its 1.0 update.
Fair enough. Connor, what you been playing?
Like Dylan, of course, first, being Sparking Zero, I've been playing the hell out of it. And I can say, just for PlayStation wise, it is a easy platinum by literally just playing the game. You can get most of the trophies in a few days. Um, I've been heavily enjoying it, although through us playing multiplayer on it, I will say the hit reg could use a little work with certain supers, and the glitch that if you're assigned to player 2 in a player slot, if you have a different control scheme type, it breaks your control. So I do think that should be priority for them to kind of fix that a bit more. But other than that, it's been really good. The what ifs are really enjoyable. I think my favorite would have to be Gohan's what if, because I won't spoil anything, but it's fucking wild.
It's fair. Anything else you've been playing?
Of course, again, Pal World. I've been playing the new Sword Online Fractured Daydream. That's been pretty fun. Uh, Seeing Death Gun try to understand what an idol is great, and I've been going back through Stellar Blade to try to get the platinum with for that, and by God, that takes time.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. So I have been diving into Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, and it's really good. I do have some quarrels with it. It is fantastic in a lot of areas, but I do think certain things probably could have been improved, and maybe through updates they'll be able to improve them. I do notice that certain moves don't work intended in certain situations like they're supposed to. But to be honest, it is a return to the Budokai series, and I would like to see them continue it. So it is definitely nice to see that. I do have two more big ones and then one small one. I have been playing Silent Hill 2 remake. I beat the story. It is an extremely faithful remake in a lot of areas with small details added to it. In a similar way, it is a lot like Resident Evil 2 remake in how it reinvents itself as a third-person survival horror and not a isometric tank control or survival horror. So it does take a lot of liberties in how it is built now, which is really nice. But it has really been nice to experience James Sutherland's story again, and the heartful message it sends that people do bad things, but you don't understand the person fully. Sometimes somebody commits a bad act because of how they're feeling or because of their push too far. And it really wants you to dive deep and understand that not every bad thing makes somebody a bad person. It wants you to look inward to yourself and the things you do for yourself, which is really nice. It's a breathtaking game, whereas games now try to either force a message on you or try to do something similar to Silent Hill 2 without understanding the subtlety of Silent Hill 2. So it is definitely a faithful remake. I am definitely going through it again, trying to get all the original endings and then get the two new endings they did add. I won't say too much on those, but it is nice. From what I've seen, there's only one unlockable weapon. I do hope there's more. But I would be fine if they were added as DLC and bring back a very specific mode from the re-release on Xbox Restless Dreams. So that's been nice. I've also been, like I mentioned earlier, playing Metaphor. It is amazing. Atlas has done it again with the JRPGs they make, or as now they are being classified as just RPGs. That tagline is falling off. These are just RPGs in so many different ways. But it's such a interesting story about not only betrayal, traitors, and a political world with very good intrigue. It even deals with racism in a very interesting and nice way. It does it without making you feel like there's a message to be said. It is about a world where people do want to live in peace, but people are prosecuted or belittled because they are different in a very unique way. It is trying to show you that sometimes people in power can be extremely evil, but people in power can be good depending on who is chosen. Um, the combat is really, really unique in how it handles turn-based, but also a little bit of an action game. It has a really cool mechanic that if the enemy is a lower level than you, you can beat it in the overworld with melee attacks. It also has a really cool class structure. I won't go too deep into that. The archetypes, though, add a really cool balance and differentiate itself enough from Persona while also still keeping that flair from Persona. But no, Metaphor, I heavily recommend it. I'm about 5 hours in, and it feels like it's going to have a really good pace throughout the entire game. The last game I have been playing is Silent Hill, Book of Memories. It is a game I never got to. It was made by Way Forward. I've done about 5 floors. Now it is an ARPG in the style of like Diablo. It is so far unique in its story department. It's about changing your past so you create a character and then you're delivered a book. And you find out that this book can actually change your past and how you go about it through a light, dark, and neutral style will influence one of the 6 endings you get. So far, it's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's a fantastic Silent Hill game, but I would say I really like it as an ARPG. It has some of the themology I love about Silent Hill, but it doesn't feel like... If you're a Silent Hill fan, I wouldn't say go out of your way to play it if you're looking for a survival horror game. I would say if you want a good ARPG or an okay RPG for the spooky season, as we call it now, I would definitely recommend it if you can get a good copy. It is an expensive game at the moment since it's limited to Vita. But so far it's really good. I'll keep you guys up to date on that one. But that's about all I've been playing. Like I said, I'm working on the Platinum for Silent Hill 2, and then I'm going to continue Metaphor. But that's all we've been playing. Let's get on to the main topic, though. So, who wants to go first? To be honest, transparent, we have all picked out 2 games that we're going to talk about that they are in all forms of way a good game that just disappointed us in a lot of ways. It might have
pissed off some people though.
So I'm willing to die on the cross for one of my games. I will stand by and say it is a good game, but I will go last because I feel like this would be one that might divide a lot of people.
I feel like it's probably going to be the longer conversation.
You're probably right. So I will go last, but which one do you want to go first?
I think Dylan's would be best to start with, because his is technically the lightest to start with.
That is completely fair. So Dylan, what you got for us?
Alright, so first up, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is Need for Speed Unbound. So... Need for Speed Unbound, in terms of the most recent games in the Need for Speed saga that's been going on currently, can definitely be seen as the black sheep of the current series of games that are coming out, because of the whole thing they had going on with the more using animated characters and the special effects being very controversial to some people in terms of how that would work. In my opinion, they did an amazing job of that. For all intents and purposes, the game is really put together. The physics are really fun. It is a fun game. But there are certain aspects of it that do kind of just let itself down. And it's not really in terms of the main game. It's in terms of how the multiplayer structure originally was. Because, for example, back in Need for Speed Heat, you were able to do the story, have fun with all your friends, and join races. Only downside with that is that it didn't have the PvP structure. But we're going to blame that more on EA and not the game in general, if you know the backstory about what happened there.
I will just correct real quick. The story you have to do alone. You couldn't do it with people.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm thinking of the other aspects of it. As in like the...
Yeah, That was 2015 that you could do the story with people.
Yeah, in Heat you were able to do the in between the story. You could work your way up to story beats in the multiplayer.
You could pretty much do everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. The actual multiplayer missions you had to do the actual story missions you had to do yourself, but working your way up to the story missions you can do with your friends, in terms of like level and money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with Unbound, the really disappointing thing that I had, and this is also a thing the community has said about the game, is how they decided to divide the structure instead, to where the multiplayer and single player, even up to your garages, are completely separate. And that was how it was initially. I will say this, the game has bounced back in quite a big way, but I still feel like the multiplayer still has a little bit more to be desired. The link-ups, amazing feature they added, just having everyone in the lobby participate in one big event that happens every so often. The way they added drag racing and drifting and completely redesigned the drift physics, amazing. The problem I still have is that the overworld still feels just empty. Like, you could go for long times in the overworld of the game and just not see anyone else. Meanwhile, back in 2015, I didn't play Payback, but even in Payback, I imagine, if Carter can correct me on this to an extent, if you go to just any section of the map, you will see people just driving around and having fun.
I thought you played Payback. I could have sworn I played a little bit with you.
No, I don't. I still have it unopened.
Oh yeah, that's right. You still have the game sealed. No, I'm thinking of someone else.
Yeah, but like Connor, even you can agree with me on that. Just Heat in 2015 had that magic that everywhere you went, you could see people just hanging out and having fun. Unbound doesn't really have that. It's only on the special events.
I say this, Heat's multiplayer was fun. It was a way of doing it with a bigger map. Payback, while a bit iffy in some people's eyes, online you could definitely have some fun with your friends. I think 2015 did it in my most favorited way, because one, the speed lists were separate; they were basically ranked. But you could do the story together. You could just mess around and do builds and drift together. There was so much you could actually do together. Cause one, it was a smaller map, yes, but it was more spread out evenly.
Yeah.
And it's like
the map was just more tightly woven together.
I feel like Unbound's map isn't managed as well, because again, the problem with a bigger map and limited player lobbies, as you said, you can drive for so long you won't see anyone. And another example be the link ups. While they are good, you also run the risk of people literally joining their lobbies and just being toxic. Because I remember 4 of us played and we had this guy just came up into the link up and started hunting us all down.
Well, I definitely agree with that. The problem with also link ups is because they give, if you do well in it, they genuinely give more money than the actual races themselves. So the game incentivizes doing these just small events and trying to build up more cash that way, and possibly getting good unlocks that way, rather than what the game is intended for, which is to just race and build your best car. They're cool modes, but I think they should have been limited to a certain way, that either the races need to be bumped up in the component of, hey, you can earn money really well this way or that way, but it shouldn't have been an incentive only to do those, because it almost feels like that's the incentive rather than building cool and unique races. I have noticed that it feels like this one has the least amount of races in it, even though it has a bigger map. It doesn't feel as good because it just feels like it repeats too many races.
Yeah, I mean, they are adding more races, but a lot of them have intersecting layouts that just kind of combines.
Not only that, there's the issue of I feel like it's a little annoying that certain races are limited to certain classes of level, and it creates a meta for the for the builds of cars, that is genuinely still broken. Because what class was it, Dylan, that one of the Ferraris can be put in?
Used to be able to be put into B class with like so much horsepower that your 0 to 60 is Mach Jesus.
I think they at least fixed it, but I think it could still go into some of the lower classes.
It can still go into A and A plus, and while it's still as broken, while it's still broken, it's not as broken.
And that's completely fair. The problem with most racing games now is, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of how Call of Duty is being handled, and how if you play certain modes, especially core, is one thing I've noticed, is most people will use the same gun because that gun is just that good. It builds this meta, where it's like, there's no objective way to make a gun yours now. It feels like you have to play a certain way. Whereas these games were built to be show-offs in a lot of ways. I mean, when you look at Need for Speed Underground all the way to the original Most Wanted, they had some of the best customization and the best way to be like, hey, I've not only built this fast car, but I made it my own. Whereas, yes, there's always cars that can outclass each other. It feels like, though, it wants you to play in a certain way, and if you don't play that way, you're not good at the game.
Yeah,
and that is a problem.
Yeah, I will say this. Go Connor.
I think 2015 had that down pat because you'll remember this, Dylan. While in drifting, and Christian, you're gonna think what the fuck with this. With drifting, one of the most broken cars was a Lamborghini Huracan. But there were still so many cars that were actually still good, like the Focus or the Miata or something else, to the point that it didn't really matter if that was broken, in quotation, because you could still rival it pretty well with your own build. And I think Payback is where they stopped doing that, because Payback, the racing, one of the more overpowered cars was the Koenigsegg. He is the worst defender, the Orsaur. And Unbound, again, they fixed it, but with the Ferrari situation that was in B class. And I feel like they had a good system with how they were handling for 2015, but it's kind of, as their newer line of games comes out, it's kind of going down.
Yeah, I mean, I share a similar opinion. I think 2015 is where it was the best. Heat, in my opinion, still retained some of that thing to where I was like, yeah, there were some overpowered cars, but if you had the skills to back it up on certain races, it did not matter.
Heat fixed a lot of the problems from Payback with the meta, I feel.
Yeah, because
I feel it tried to go back to 2015, but I still feel 2015 is probably the closest we have ever got to, like, Underground and all that.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the way they should have... Actually, this is a thing I have a kind of irk with in terms of the Need for Speed structure that they have for Unbound. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's not really a Need for Speed thing. They should not have class-based PI.
I agree.
Instead, it should just be every car in the game can have every single upgrade if you unlock them, or just like in Heat, if you gambled it. Because we remember the high heat races.
Oh boy!
In order to unlock the max upgrades.
Yeah, I remember Christian's first experience with that, running into Orion.
Again, that's why I love Heat. Moments like that, just playing with your buddies. You really don't get that in Unbound anymore. But
yeah.
But you know, the whole reward system. But how, yeah, every car in the game can pretty much be maxed out. But whether they were maxed out meant they were good was wholly dependent on the car, not the PI. Because obviously you had the cars that were just handling demons, such as the RSR and the Evo, which makes sense, lightweight, all-wheel drive, or mid-engine.
Yeah.
And then you had
Fair Lady.
Yeah, and then you had the And then the speed demons, the Fair Lady, stuff like that, and which was my main car. I love the Fair Lady. I loved wrecking people with it just because it is a bitch to handle, and I was able to tame it mostly.
Bro, you went head first into a wall the first time. I remember that.
Yep. They don't call the Devil's E for nothing. Jesus. And then obviously you had, if you want to do drag racing, you had the cars that were absolute 0 to 60 monsters, like the Cadillac, not the Eldorado, the Bel Air, the Chevy Bel Air, the older muscle cars that were just absolute torque 0 to 60 monsters. But if you put them in an actual race that isn't a straight line, good luck. You know? And it's just that just doesn't work in Unbound with the PI structure. Not to say I haven't remade a fairly easy an S class that absolutely demolishes people hilariously.
Okay.
That's rotary. That is hilarious, but it's just not the same. It's just PI system for Need for Speed dividing the cars into separate classes mandatorily should not work. Every car should be able to max out to the best of their capabilities on the capabilities they are good at. Whether that accidentally creates an RSR, that's a whole separate thing.
Well, most definitely. I mean, there needs to be... there should be limitations, but there also should be a way for people to have fun and see how far they can push something. Going back to my Call of Duty, what I was talking about with that, with how gun customization was made so unique in every game, and then it hit a point where people were using meta guns because they were just the best way to do it, because it broke the time to kill in core, for example. So, like, this was an interesting dilemma that they have put themselves in, and it's like, yes, a sniper at power should outrange an assault rifle at close range, but an assault rifle shouldn't kill a sniper at a far away range in the way it does it. And you're running into this issue of, yeah, you might be able to hit your shots, but the problem was when the time to kill is changed so drastically because of an attachment and how the gun is operating, it breaks how it works. And it goes for the same thing on cars, is when you build this car and it becomes so broken that no other car can beat it, not even higher end cars maxed out, it breeds this problem of, well, why am I working on my favorite car when I should just build this other car that I might not like as much, but because it's better and will help me win more races. And that breeds a problem of this. It just doesn't make the game fun for long. It breeds this problem of this game is no longer what it could be. It's become a problem.
I assume we're in agreement then that 2015 probably was out of. I would say the new gen Need for Speeds, because 2015 was meant to be a reboot of the series. I assume we're in agreement that 2015 did a lot of the stuff right.
Yeah, the physics just needed tweaking.
Yeah, I didn't. I felt the physics could be hilarious sometimes, but like even the customization I feel like was better, because in terms of engine, you were actually replacing engine parts rather than just getting card with perks, said perk card on car, done.
Yeah, and I will say, so yeah, it's just like, that's my overall gripe with Unbound, is that very like, really solid, well put together game, but the core is just not where it should be. The core should be more in line with either 2015 at best, Heat at minimum.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's completely fair. In a lot of ways, it feels like sometimes a game can come out and it's great and you want to see improved upon, but the developer is like, okay, we did good, how can we improve? And they move backwards instead. And it's being seen in a lot of big franchises. So that is definitely interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I want to bring up for Unbound. Should I bring up my next game, or should we have Connor talk about his first game?
Let's go our first games, our lighter games that we can talk about. So yeah, go ahead, Connor. What's your first game that you want to talk about?
Mine are technically two heavy ones, because you've got the Assassin's Creed community, you've got the anime community. Pick your poison.
Let's do the Assassin's Creed community. They're in the shadows, anyways.
I hate you.
I mean, to be honest, I mean Ubisoft somehow dug themselves a hole in a lot of ways. Yes, I'm looking forward to Shadows, but the problem is, why did you wait to bring in a historian until it was too late?
Yeah, but the Assassin's Creed game I actually wanted to bring up is one that a lot of people enjoy, and I do need to say before I bring it up, I do enjoy it, but the one I'm bringing up is Assassin's Creed 3. Or 3. So first, I want to say good points. I enjoy the gameplay. I enjoy getting to experience it, the Templars from Haytham's side. I enjoy how the story is. But me and Christian have actually talked about this quite a bit. One gripe with the game is Connor Kenway in the game. I feel like he could have been done a lot better. There's a lot of stupid shit he kind of does throughout the game, and I think I said this when we were talking about it last time. I feel like if they would have kept the game on Haytham, I feel like the story might have gone out better. I know that's not the point. The point wasn't to really focus on Haytham as much, but I still feel like it would have been a little bit of a better story, because I don't like Connor Kenway as a character. I'm sorry, I can't.
And so you're not wrong there. In a lot of ways, Connor Kenway could have been an extremely good character for what they were trying to set up. And the problem with it, and we will not go into spoilers, I know it is an old game, but we'll keep that to if we decide to make a video dedicated strictly on the big reasons we don't care for Assassin's Creed 3 in a lot of ways. But the problem is the game starts off with Haytham, a really interesting character with a lot of moral dilemmas, and shows such a unique side. And then you move to Connor. And yes, you start with Connor young, but the problem is his main goal for being an assassin is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Flawed in a lot of ways. So it is about revenge in a lot of ways, which should have never made him an assassin. Because of what the assassins are supposed to represent. They're supposed to put the mission forward and any personal beliefs behind them. So that's one issue I have a problem with Connor. And then his character growth doesn't come until, I think, sequence 11, and I just don't think it's well written. Connor as a character has a lot of issues that I agree with, but I will say this about Assassin's Creed 3. I do think about how well that world is constructed and how fun it is to explore in 3. The problem lies with how they chose to write Connor, in my opinion.
Yeah, the world for 3 is amazing. I will still say that being able to be put on time with that it's at with the American word. Why can't I think of the word? Fucking brain. Jesus Christ. It's the American Revolution's put out, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. I don't
during the events of trying. Yeah, it's trying to be put during the time of when the U.S. Was trying to rebel and make itself separate from English colonization.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. I couldn't remember. It's like 2:30 in the morning for me, so my brain's like.
Oh, you were perfectly fine, dude. But yeah.
But that world is genuinely enjoyable, and even the homestead system, they're getting to build up the home of the man who Connor actually learns from in terms of being an assassin, and in a way to preserve it. It's like it's a really nice touch, and again, as you said, Connor Kenway's just not written that well.
And that is completely fair, honestly. It's just, you look at it and you wonder what happened for it to be put in that way, and it has so much potential, but it falls on itself in trying to execute it. And like I said, I think Connor could have been one of the more interesting characters, but it's taken away with how his dad is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and this is not going too far into the story because, like Christian said, it's an old game, we know, but there's still going to always eventually be that one person that's never played it, so won't go too far into it. But there's also so much misplaced hate on Haytham from Connor, and it bothers me because it's just like, is Haytham a good person? No. Again, he works for the Templars. He's not the best person. He's done some bad things. It's ironic. This comes from a meme. Just because he is a bad guy doesn't mean he is a bad guy. And Connor puts so much hate on his father just for that.
Right. No, it has a lot of problems, but it definitely fits the category that it is a good game. It has a lot of flaws. It just disappointed us because it could have been more.
Yeah.
Anything more you want to say on it, Connor? I know we spent quite a while on Need for Speed Unbound, so I want to see if there's any more you want to say on it.
I mean, not really without like getting into the actual story, because for the stuff that I would want to say, that would to do with like Charles Lee and all that. So since even though it's an old game, we don't want to spoil a story. I kind of can't, but yeah.
I just don't have much to say because I've not played that one.
No, that is completely fair. Is that all you have, Connor, or do you just want anything else you want to say, or do you want to move on?
I don't think there is much to say. I will say, though, in terms of getting, to give it positive praise, getting to see through the eyes of an actual Templar is really fun, though. And we talked about this with Unity is another example of doing this. It shows that the Assassins and Templars aren't black and white. There's good qualities and bad qualities about both. Because there's always the argument of the Templars want order and the Assassins want freedom. But too much of freedom and too much of order is a bad thing. So it is a very good parallel to show different sides of it. And I think that is where I will leave it.
Okay, fair enough. So, moving on from that, we are going to start with my first one. I was debating on a couple things, and I settled on one that I feel like I have talked about a decent amount, but I feel like isn't talked about enough in communities. So I chose Resident Evil 5 for my first one. Now, so Resident Evil 5, in a lot of ways, is a really, really fun game, and I do think it has really cool and unique story beats. I do like how it ties back into a little bit of the camp of Resident Evil 4, starting on a positive light. My problem with it dives deeper into the story, and I will not, again, we will not spoil these games. I will want to have discussions later on about these games in more depth and spoilers included for main story games. So, Resident Evil 5, I think, done something it shouldn't have, which is made Chris not Chris. And what I mean by that is Chris has always been a very stoic hero. Yes, he has moments of weakness, especially if you look at Resident Evil 1, but even Code Veronica, he's written in a way that he's supposed to be a stoic hero. He's supposed to be that hero. And the problem I have with Resident Evil 5 is it turns into a revenge story about a quarter way into the game. And it no longer makes Chris stoic, it makes him revenge-filled, and I think it weakens what he is supposed to represent as a character. And I think that's why I think Shiva is written better, and she's a new character, which is very intriguing in a lot of the ways it is shown. But as the story progresses, it just doesn't feel good. Chris's dynamic with the main antagonist of the game, who I will say, this isn't a spoiler, it is well known at this point, is Albert Wesker. And the problem with his dynamic with Albert Wesker is Albert's more interesting written. He's more dynamic as a character. I think he is more memorable as a character in the game than Chris is. Chris has one notable scene that is not a spoiler, is heavily known as Mean Doll to Hell, of him punching a boulder. That is a fine scene, but where it falls flat is just how dickish Chris is throughout the entire story. Whereas in the first game, and even Code Veronica, he's trying to be a leader. He's trying to be a better being in the story. And I feel like it falls flat in the story component of gameplay-wise, it's definitely good, and even I think adding co-op was a great idea. But for me personally, Chris just isn't Chris in the game, and it was so good to see him in 7. Slight spoiler for 7, I will say it's nothing major, but when I saw Chris Redfield and I played the DLC in 7. It felt like a reform, especially even in 8. It just finally felt like they understood again what made Chris Redfield interesting. And I was just going through the reviews for all the Resident Evil games, and it's so interesting to me. Resident Evil 5 is sitting at a 9.3. Resident Evil 2, which I think is by far one of the better stories in Resident Evil, is sitting at a 9. This is the remake. Resident Evil 1, the original, 8.7 on IGN. The remake is at a 9. And going back real quick, slide tangent, Resident Evil 1 remake, okay? GameCube and Wii is sitting at a 9. Its re-release of the remake is sitting at an 8. IGN, fix your shit. It's the same game. And then Resident Evil 2, yeah, it's the same remake, but you know what? IGN is just IGN at this point. Okay. But looking at these reviews, and then of course they gave Resident Evil 4 remake a 10, and I was trying to find the original Resident Evil 4, but my problem is I'm sorry, but 5 is not better than 2 remake. 5 is not better than the original Resident Evil. It's like Chris, in my opinion, was done dirty in that story. And I think it could have been a better tell. And the problem is, it leads into my main gripe with Resident Evil 6. Upon many others in 6, but they retell another revenge tale with Chris, and it's just done worse. And I will definitely say Resident Evil 5 more than 6, because I hate to say it, I enjoy 6 better than 5 for Leon's story and Ada's story. But Resident Evil 5 is a weak game in the series for me because I don't feel like Capcom understood why Chris Redfield was a unique character, such a good character. And they just wanted to tell a revenge tale, and I don't think it works for Chris Redfield himself. Any comments and concerns?
I mean, yeah, I agree because so 5 is one of the ones I never got to physically play, but I did watch a lot of playthroughs on it, and it bothers me of like how different it's of a change it is. I will say thank you for reminding me of the boulder punching scene. I got a laugh out of that. I love that scene, but it's oh my god, it just reminding me of that. Like it bothers me so much of what they did to him for that game. What was that?
Video started playing. God, hell, Dylan.
Okay.
God dang it.
Anything from you, Dylan?
No, really, just like I have heard some stuff about that game, and Christian really just hammered home the points that I had thoughts of too when I saw a lot of people
Yeah.
talking about it online and like playing it.
Well, you don't play a lot of horror games, so you wouldn't have seen it as much, though. I imagine would be correct.
No, as I said, I'm not a horror game kind of person, but like I do like to see playthroughs here and there and stuff like that, and I've seen a few playthroughs of it.
Yeah.
I would genuinely say I recommend you 4, 5, and even a little bit of 6, because they aren't straight horror; they're horror themed. I would say they're best way I can put it. It's like on a horror amusement park. You are given the tools to just be an action hero in a setting that is horror themed. But I would say they're not horror games or even survival horror games. They're horror parks. You're going to be doing a lot more action than scary antics.
How would you put the remakes on that level, like for 2, 3, and 4?
So, 2, I would think is a little bit more of a horror game in a lot of the ways it's built and mechanic-wise. Did it scare me as much as the original 2? No. Excuse me. But, I do think that, 3 is in a similar boat where I do think it's very similar. It's not as scary, but it's still, I wouldn't recommend it to somebody that is having trouble playing horror games because it still has enough to be too dire, if that makes sense.
I feel like the horror in that as well is like the fact that 2, Mr. X is always on around to chase you, and 3, you have to deal with Nemesis constantly. It's like, are they as bad as the original? No, they were. Dear God, they were absolutely terrifying.
I will say there's more tension in 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And then there are some good, in my opinion, scares, but there are a lot more scares in where they're placed, unlike the originals. So I definitely wouldn't recommend 2 and 3 because of that. If to somebody that's like, hey, I want to get into horror games, but I don't want to start off too hardcore, I would definitely go play Resident Evil 4 remake or original, 5, and at least do Leon's and Ada's story in 6. If you want to deal with QTE events, play Jake's, and if you want to deal with Chris Redfield's bullshit again, do his story in 6.
6 is an interesting ride.
Yeah, it really is, because I think the best story in the game is Leon's, second is Ada's, and then Jake has a really good story marred behind repetitive QTE events, and then Chris Redfield's story is just there.
Yeah.
But definitely 5, in my opinion. I get it's a lot of people's favorite Resident Evil. I don't understand how in the story department, because I do think, well, everything not dealing with Chris Redfield is good. Everything dealing with Chris Redfield, in my opinion, is weak writing. Because
I hope you don't get that black trench coat.
the problem is, it's like, when you look at Resident Evil 4 and how well written that game was between the humor and the dialogue, it was actually really well written. It had a lot of heart put behind it. Whereas I think 5, they tried to replicate it, but the problem is they did it bad. And it's one of the weakest games I wanted to talk about, but I think it was enough to talk about because we know we're going to get a remake of it. So that's what I want them to address, and what could elevate it from being a game I was disappointed in story-wise into a game I could fall in love with. But the problem is they would have to rewrite Chris and the story so drastically that I just don't see that happen.
I'd say there's a small possibility, because there is quite a bit with the remakes they have changed, if I remember correctly.
Oh no, most definitely. I mean, in the Resident Evil 4 remake, Leon makes less jokes. There's still jokes in the game, but he's more stoic, which I find really interesting. Because my main problem with 5 is that Chris Redfield isn't stoic in the game. He's a revenge-filled asshole, and I
Watch,
just don't agree with that.
watch Chris become what Leon was in the original 4 now. They just
that
pull a complete 180.
That might piss me off more, actually, because like, okay, how is it? And it's so funny because I make the joke that Leon is a raging alcoholic. That is, he, if I'll say this, Chris Redfield is the Bruce Lee, where he's very stoic. He's very like, I will beat your ass and save the day. Mentality in a lot of ways. Whereas Leon is the Jackie Chan. He's the drunken master in a lot of ways.
I love that.
I don't know why I'm
Because-
here. I don't know what I'm doing. I just know I'm gonna have to kick some ass.
Because there's a line that always kills me. It's from one of the animated movies where Leon is just drinking himself into his depression, and Chris stops him from drinking, and Leon just reaches for the bottle and pours more, and it just
I
makes me
know what you're
laugh
talking about.
every
yeah.
time. But you
It's a great scene.
then you go to 6, and Chris Redfield is trying to pull his best impression of Leon, but he's just a depressed, better lack of words, emo boy, because he's just like, don't talk to me, I lost soldiers, and dude, it's just such bad writing, because it's like a repeat of what they wanted to do with 5 on a grander scale, and it's like, it didn't work in 5, why are you telling me the same story?
You guys
now you're
ever-
adding a different wrinkle to it.
You guys remember when the memes that caused though of an emo Chris?
Yeah, that was with
They-
Village,
they
if I
were-
remember correctly.
Yes, they were a reminder of a dark time, but they were fucking great.
That was the best part to come out of them doing that to Chris Redfield. So yeah,
I
that is definitely the interesting part.
I thought the darkest time in the Resident Evil community was when the Netflix series was made.
At least we got Lance Reddick. God rest his soul. That man is the only thing that made that really nice and unique.
Yeah, yeah.
No, poor Resident Evil has been part of the darkest timeline for a while. It's finally getting itself out, which is really nice. So, that's all I have to really say about Resident Evil 5 without going in circles, honestly. So, Dylan, let's hear that second game.
Speaking of circles, we're right back where we began. So for my second game, it is the Mad Max game on PS4. Really beautiful game. The combat system is nice and really solid combat system. And the vehicle customization and the vehicle physics and the vehicle combat are all major pluses for me. The main problem I have is with the game's structure through the world. It is, in my opinion, so repetitive. And as I said, I did praise the combat, but the combat for me falls into the same thing. It is very repetitive, encounters, very repetitive, and even when it comes to boss encounters, repetitive, and having to just go do fetch quests. And while I do get it, it's meant to be a game that takes place in the world itself, trying to not affect the timeline of the main movie continuity. They could have had done at least something that adds a bit more spiciness to it than, oh no, they jacked my ride.
So I'm gonna interject real quick because I really like this because I have a different perspective for the Mad Max game than you do. I do agree on one note though that I wish there was a little bit more to the open world structure and the mission structure because sadly the mission structure is built into the side activities in order to progress the story. So it does have this very big repetition of, hey, let me go tear down this scarecrow to progress the story. And I do agree with that, in that I wish there was a little bit more variety since that is the main focus of the game. Where I do disagree a lot is the melee combat, because it's a more brutal take on the Arkham system, combat system. And I do think it feels always really good, even though there isn't a whole lot of enemy variety. There's enough that while I'm playing the game, I feel like the best way, if I could say this, is if Batman is the ultimate jujitsu master or the ultimate mixed martial arts master, Mad Max is the ultimate brawler, where every punch feels like I'm just putting my weight behind it to break that guy's jaw, or I'm trying to completely disembowel someone in the midst of a fight while also worrying about the guy next to me. So the combat always just feels so good that I don't feel its repetition, because it makes me feel like I'm Max trying to survive in a hostile world. I will also disagree with the story where Max gets his magnum opus taken. Well, the Beauty in Black, and you even to see it disemboweled, and then they're going to build a better car, which is the magnum opus. That's my bad. But I do love that, because it feels like Max is always having to start from scratch. Anytime you watch a Mad Max movie, you feel like Max is always having to deal with something in a similar formula. And it just feels like Max can't catch a break. So I do feel like, from story standpoint, they understand what makes Mad Max mad. And I do think the story works in that regard. I do agree, though, that where it does fall flat is in the side content that is actually main content. It's only side content if you want 100% the game. And I do agree that I do think it falters there. It tries to be a checklist game, and only a checklist game in that category.
Yeah, which overall is just my main gripe with the game. Because, me being on the spectrum kind of thing, just having to go out and do a checklist is not something I've always been fond of when it comes to certain games. When games start becoming to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this, just you have to go down the line of a checklist with no interaction between to spice it up, that's when my mind just goes, something else.
And that's honestly completely fair. I do get what you're saying on a lot of that area, because I do feel like in certain areas it definitely could have been improved to make the game 10 times better. But I do think everything else it does so well that it almost just makes itself alleviate all of the other things. Like, it's so interesting to me on how a game can falter in, honestly, quite a big area, but still improve itself in every other area that big area just feels small.
Yeah, and it's not to say that I didn't enjoy the game. I did enjoy the aspects of the game that I really did enjoy. I do love the aspects that I love about the game. It's just the in-between sections made it a bit of a slog for me to just complete through. But the sections that I did really enjoy, I love them. So that's kind of my thing with the game, is that I do love the game, but those in-between sections, they are a chore for me to get through to get to the sections I love.
And that's completely fair, honestly. I do think it's a really interesting pick for a game that you were disappointed in. A good game at that, too.
And what's your take on this, Dante Del Demonio?
I love how you say that, but it's probably uploading. This is just gonna be a stock image, so that's probably not gonna be seen. Context: my profile picture on Discord is Dante with a sombrero. Anyways, I mean, I agree with a lot of the points that Christian made and some of the points that you made. I never got to fully finish the game because I had it through PS Plus in a while and it was a long time ago it came to PS Plus, and I had stopped getting PS Plus for just a little while because of money situations. So I never went back to it, but I agree with the whole thing about the mission structure. I do enjoy the combat though, because like Christian said, it's the more brutal take in the Arkham combat, and I absolutely love the Arkham combat.
Is there anything else you want to say on it? Dylan, I feel like I pretty much said my piece on how I feel about Matrix.
Yeah, that's pretty much my take for the most part. I guess my final thing would really be like the physics for the car combat and the car racing were just so good. I'm kind of disappointed they didn't somehow find some way to at least include like at least some kind of side mode of like a derby or something. Would be really fun if they ended up doing that at one point.
A destruction derby would have been really cool, like a mode to get extra parts or extra vehicles. I do agree with that because of how the car combat felt. I think they could have really done that. I will say the races in the game, I really loved them. With the other vehicles you could use, and then how you could customize the magnum opus.
Yeah, it's a good thing to know though that in that timeline, Rockstar Energy Drinks is still working on getting that bread.
I know. Right.
The Rockstar Energy Buggy. Oh my god. Yeah, so that's it for my games. I'd say they're very interesting contradictions to each other.
All right, Gunnar, go ahead and talk about your second game.
Alright, here we go. This is where we're also probably going to get into something else and a little bit of a tangent on this. Fair warning. My second game was... so I was thinking for a while what I want to do, pick as a second game, and I enjoy quite a few anime games, and I was like, this is the perfect example because of my problems with it. The Demon Slayer game, Hinokami Chronicles. So I will do what I did for Assassin's Creed. I will start with the good points. I enjoy getting to go through the story of some of the story of Demon Slayer again. I do enjoy the movesets of the characters. I think they're very... They show the skills and combat of the characters pretty well. I enjoy how the demons play a bit more, and I enjoyed when they released the DLC for Tengen, because he is my favorite character, and he is one of my favorite characters, and he is so fun to play as. But at the end of the day, and you can argue this all you want, it is just another glorified anime brawler, and at that core as well, I find it's taken a lot from the Naruto Storm series. There are other things that make it different. Yeah, I guess there's a few systems. Example being the how you play as the demons, how you were on your own for that one. But a lot of the systems are pulled from other games of the Storm series. At the end of the day, it is another goddamn anime brawler, and I've gotten to the point where there's some anime brawlers are fine, like Sparking Zero. It's been so long since we got anything from Budokai. That gets a pass. Another one coming out, I will have to wait and see if I give it a pass, is the Bleach Rebirth of Souls. I am still uncertain with that. I am going to see how that is. If it does enough stuff for me to say that, yeah, I can give it a pass, fair enough. But I think this is more a case of I am more sick of games being anime brawlers at this point. I feel like it's something that's been beaten with a stick so many times. It's like, it would be so refreshing to like have an anime series that, because there's so many anime series that, for example, this is one of the easier ones for certain ones they could do. One they do with One Piece is make it a Muso game. You could turn something into an action RPG. There's so many things other anime games can do, and the fact that they're just defaulting to, oh, we are anime brawler, it annoys me. And I will say I'm happy, for example, the Reincarnated Slime game is not an anime brawler. I feel like it being the 2D style game it is a lot more fun. Is it a much minor game? Yeah, but it's something different other than anime brawler.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because, funnily enough, Dragon Ball, the granddaddy of anime brawlers, also ended up having their own original game concepts. Everyone ever remembers the Legacy of Goku trilogy, technically trilogy, because the Boo game was included in that. Those were
It's
more of like open world RPG.
it's funny to me in terms of Dragon Ball because you could argue Xenoverse is technically an arena brawler, but also isn't.
I
And
would
Fighters is
I
2D, but
I
then
would count Xenoverse more as a action
It,
MMO.
it, it's an RPG brawler. Because
yeah,
it gives you the option to create a character and give them stat allocations, and not only that, it is built around a class system, because when you pick your race, you're also picking your class for that character. So it does add a unique twist to the anime brawler, because it is still a brawler at heart. It just adds a lot more RPG subtext to the game itself. So it
not
adds a little another layer to it.
not only that with Xenoverse with the created character. Um, I know a lot of people know this about it already. Some maybe don't. But even let's use the Saiyans for example. Female and male have different specialties. They went severely in depth with that game to like. Do I wish they would just go and do a Xenoverse tree? Yes, 100%. But that game can still be fun to go back to with your friends. Like the modding community for It's Alive, we're still getting actually pretty good DLC. So I feel like it's one of the more brawler type games that's done a unique twist. That, as I said, it's got enough of a twist to make it different. Fighters was more 2D anime brawler, and Fighters is. Would you give Fighters a pass as well, or what would you say?
I would give it a pass on the fact that it has more. It's done by Arxis. It is
Yeah,
100% dedicated to being a pure fighter at heart.
yeah.
So the problem, and I want to state this as kindly as I can, Bandai, please go fuck yourself. I'm so sick and tired of you thinking it's okay to take the animes we love and think should be treated at a higher quality. And think it's just okay to put out almost shovelware for these games. They are fine or they're bad. There is no in between. And I will say, if you find Demon Slayer good, good on you. The problem with it is these games could have been so much more, but instead of making something unique, they doubled down on making these brawlers. And it's wild to me because when you look at Bandai's track record, you've got your Tales of Arise or your Tales of Grace's F. Um, uh, those are really unique JRPGs with really good systems. Okay, you've got Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, which was a good take on taking Z's story and making it more of an anime action RPG that felt good to be in. You've got, you know, they publish Elden Ring and Dark Souls and all that. And it feels like the only reason they make these anime brawler games is because they're made to make a quick buck. And it's a disgrace as a fan of not only anime and manga, but to face of being a gamer and enjoying gaming as a hobby, because it's like, why would we be continuously getting this and it be okay to like okay it? And I'm so sick and tired of people thinking that's okay. Like, look at not only Demon Slayer, which could have been more. It could have been an amazing action RPG, or if they wanted to do a unique turn-based with really unique skills, that would have been perfect. I mean, think about a turn-based Demon Slayer game that would have had some of the coolest special moves for characters and went through, say, let's just say the first two seasons in the first movie. I think that would have been amazing, because you would have this idea of a beautiful art style and a really cool idea in the way combat could have been done. And I feel like just throwing it to anime brawlers is the fastest way to be like, okay, we don't have to spend too much. Anime fans are too stupid to want anything else, so we're just going to make it like this, and even the money we make on it will be enough that we can just keep printing these.
I think that was why when another game came out, I think that was why I was so happy that the Fairy Tail game was a turn-based RPG, because they didn't take a lot of attacks, but they took enough attacks to showcase how cool and unique the characters were. It wasn't loaded with a bunch of characters. There was enough characters playable that there was something for everyone, and it was something different that wasn't turned into an anime brawler, and made it so there were so many things about those characters in a turn-based anime game that was unique and fun.
Yeah, which is true.
And you're most definitely right. Oh, go ahead, Dylan.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, ironically, I feel like back then, and back in my days, when anime games were technically lower quality, they were more diverse. And also,
They 100% were.
Yeah, because an example, like you said, you kind of wish they made, Demon Slayer more of a RPG style. Funnily enough, going back to my thing of the Mac Daddy of anime brawlers, Dragon Ball did that too when they made Prepare for Attack of the Saiyans for DS. Really awesome, small RPG that delved into every character, and it sort of had its own original story that took place before a major arc in the series that still flowed well into it, and you got to experience cool moves, very interesting game mechanics, bring back the sparking meter from the games, the brawlers, but in a way to instead do ultimate and team fusion attacks.
Not only that, another problem I can say with anime games is if it's not an anime brawler, it's a phone game.
Oh, yep.
And while I get there, some people enjoy that. I don't want to play another anime gacha game. A gacha game that's just based off an anime. That shit pisses me off because it's just like there's so many things you could do. Hell, this game didn't do great, but even the Black Clover game tried to do something different. Did it go well? Probably not, but it tried.
It was, and that's a great point. It tried to be an Overwatch clone in a lot of areas. It tried to be Overwatch, but more traditional MOBA multiplayer in a lot of ways. And it was such a different take. Was it great? No, but it was something different. And it's like, we don't even really get Muso style anime games anymore. But it's just like...
The one that mostly focuses on that is Pirate Warriors, honestly. I honestly say, I feel like you could have even at least made the Bleach game. If you didn't want to go anime brawler, I could argue you could easily go Muso. Because while this is a phone game, it's also a console game now. But it is one of the few games that is pretty enjoyed because it's not heavy pay to win. It's pretty good. Is Brave Souls. That has a little bit of a Muso element when you think about it. I'd argue you could do a Muso game for Bleach very easily.
Yeah. And it's just, I feel like there are so many, like as you say, there are so many other game genres that games can go into. I mean, if anything, I would love to see the Neptunia series devs do an anime style game. Or do a game based off an anime.
So what's really interesting about you bringing up Bleach, it had somewhat of a Muso style game, and it was called Bleach Soul. I'm gonna try to pronounce this properly, but Recon, I think it's pronounced. And it was, I don't think well received, but it was definitely a new, unique game, and it was published by NIS America. It was developed by Japan Studio. Well, that's interesting. And that is really unique, and one of the last really unique anime games I think we ever got. We did get, One Piece Odyssey here recently, and I do recommend people, if you're tired of Muso games, go buy it. Buy Fairy Tail 2. I know a lot of people don't like Fairy Tail or don't care for Fairy Tail, but it's like, we have to support these type of games because it feels like there's more passion in them. And I think these anime brawlers just need to be stopped in a lot of ways, because it's not good to have this kind of game just release and think it's okay, where it halts what is creative about being a video game.
Yeah, I mean, I want them to, like I said, back in the old days, a lot of stuff was more creative when it comes to this stuff. Like, like bring back the games that were RPGs that, although they had a smaller cast than the brawlers, they made every character in the cast be so colorful and so vibrant to their character, and they were also able to focus more on the moves and stuff like that for the characters, making them look good and stuff like that, because it was such a smaller cast. And they could have, and I'll face it, a lot of anime and a lot of manga nowadays love doing time skips. Have the stories take place in those time skips and have it to where it really doesn't affect that.
I was also gonna say, this is just go back to a Christian. I apologize if I butcher the word, but the pronunciation, just to go for that, I think it's the same title of the Spada's resurrection form. I think it's just straight up resurrection.
Okay.
I could have butchered that, just be aware.
That's completely fair. But it's really interesting in a lot of ways when you look at all this. And actually, do want to bring this up because I was looking at through developers that have been making anime brawler games, and this is a really fun one. So this is Studio Dips. Now, they are heavily tied with Bandai Namco.
Mhm.
Are you ready to hear some of the anime games they made? And we'll start at 2016.
Okay.
So they had Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2.
Mhm.
They did also Dragon Ball Heroes for the arcade.
Mhm.
They did Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet.
Really?
Yep. They did Soul Calibur, I think that is 6. Yeah, that's 6. So Dimps helped worked on that.
If it's past 2016, I'm pretty sure it's 6. Yes, it is.
Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission for the Switch.
Oh, so the one where Yamcha went Super Saiyan.
They did Dragon Ball The Breakers, funny enough.
I was gonna say, another game that ties into the wasn't good, but at least did something different and kind of seemed like a cash grab, but they did do something different. Dragon Ball Breakers.
Yeah, well, and then also, they just had a recent release. Connor, you said you were playing it. Sword Art Online, Fractured Daydream. They did that.
Great.
And then now they are working on a remaster of Freedom Wars, something they originally created for the Vita. And it's so wild to me, because it's like, I just named off a bunch of games they have worked on that aren't just brawlers, but let me look up Demon Slayer and that developer.
They can do games other than anime brawlers. Part of me thinks it's probably Bandai. I don't want to assume, but I think it could be just Bandai just saying, hey, just turn this into an anime brawler. And I'm glad they worked on Fractured Daydream, because I need to say, I've been playing it. It's amazing. Like, I'm enjoying it. It's also not pay to win. Do they have a battle pass-esque thing? Yes, but you can't do anything with it for premium currency. You have to work for the in-game points for it. You cannot pay to win with this game. The only currency is optional cosmetics that most of them you can still earn through doing missions if you don't want to pay for them. And it is done so well.
Alright, I'm going to go on a little rant here. So I just found out, and I don't know why I never noticed this. So you guys ready to hear who made Demon Slayer, PS5, and Xbox?
Mm-hmm.
It would be CyberConnect. a studio I absolutely have admired for years.
Oh, I'm
And
aware.
let's just go off a little history. Dot hack infection through quarantine. Naruto Ultimate Ninja 1 and 2. They also did Dot hack and the GU series. Let's continue. They have worked on most of the Ultimate Ninja games, by the way. So
I'm pretty sure
any
they worked
Naruto
on
game,
all of them.
Yep, they also did the JoJo Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle. They did.
That's such a fun game.
Let's see. We're some real fun ones. Ultimate Ninja. And here's where it gets really interesting. So there is a break of a period where they have only done so little of games. But let's just look at them. Ultimate Ninja Storm 4, Ultimate Ninja Storm Trilogy. Then they released a re-release of GU in the form of Last Recode. Then they did Kakarot. And then they did Fuga Melodies of Steel. Then Demon Slayer. And then they re-released JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle. And then they did a sequel to Fuga. And then Naruto Boruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections. Then they did what? Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabi Sweep the Board.
Yeah, that's the Mario Party Demon Slayer thing.
Yahoo.
So
I'll give it that. At least that did something different. Am I happy?
Nezuko-chan, roll the die.
Am I happy it's a Mario Party style game? No, not really.
What?
But am I glad they at least tried? Sure.
The
I'll
problem is, like, you have such a talented... I mean, they made Ashura's Wrath.
Yeah,
This company has made really, really unique games and then been labeled to making most of the anime brawlers. And it sucks because it's like, where is a remake of the first four Dot Hack games? Where is a sequel to maybe doing Ashura's Wrath? You know, it doesn't have to follow Ashura's, but, you know, like, you can make so many things. I'm so glad they're making games they want to, like Fuga, but it's like, for every Fuga, it feels like we're getting a Demon Slayer or a Naruto, and it's like, we need to stop. It's like, let them make things they want to make. There's a game they're making called Cecil, it looks like. I'm going to look this up while you continue.
I genuinely think, and I said this already, they know they can make good games other than anime brawlers. They know that. I genuinely think part of it could be Bandai. And, like, because it doesn't make sense when they know they can do such good games that they're defaulting to anime brawlers. And I do think part of it could be Bandai, because I'm pretty sure they do have some of the control and say with anime games, since most of their logos are slapped on it.
Alright, so this is actually really unique. So they are making a sequel to Fuga, and then they're going to be doing a game called Tokyo Ogre Gate. And it's labeled as a high-speed parkour-style slashing action. I don't know what that entails, if it's a 3D game or what. Then there's another game called, I think it's pronounced CL. But it says Gotholic, Lolitas, Vengeance, and Witches. And it's described as a 2.5D side-scrolling, ultra-fun with witch action game.
That sounds interesting.
So it's like they are making really unique games, but it feels like it's so far and in between that it's like... And these games aren't talked about enough. I'm like super happy Fuga is getting the sequel, and I would love to buy these games physically because they look really, really unique. But it's like their main games that get talked about are these anime brawlers. When I just talked about two really cool sounding games that probably won't get talked about much, which is scary in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It's fucking wild how most of the focus on their games is anime brawlers, and it's why I say I think Bandai probably has say in it, because there's so many good games they have made, and it bothers me. Like I've said this about Storm Connections. Are there some things it fixes? Yeah, but I don't think, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think the game should have been made at all. Like, it got its own little story, but I'm gonna be upfront. All that's different is a little UI, and now there's no a whole knockdown thing, and another story. They did it with did they do it with Storm 4? I don't remember if I think they added an expansion. If it is just glorified Storm 4, why not just say, hey, we haven't done anything for this game in a while. Just add that stuff in as DLC for that game, because that's all it is. It's just a bit of DLC at the end of the day. Like, that's what it feels like. And the ability to play through some of the older story scenarios, because they have a mode where you play through some of the key battles they had from Storm 1 to Storm 4. Now the Zabuza fight, I don't think we ever got in Storm 1, so that is in there. But that also means you don't get that cinematic fight with Zabuza reanimated. Is it cool that they brought some of the fights back? Yes. However, there is a lot of content. The Ten Tails versus Kuruma fight is completely gone. I don't think there's any of the giant fights, and they were genuinely enjoyable. Not only that, to add the voice lines, instead of having the voice actors that you have for the characters that you are adding, they used AI voice instead. If you go look at the new version of Naruto, that's not the voice actor. I'm pretty sure they used AI voice for that, and it sounds fucking awful.
Oh god.
Yeah, no, it's really bad, and it's really interesting. And I was just doing a quick Google search just so we could talk about this, because I think it's really interesting that I don't think Bandai knows what fans want, and supposedly CyberConnect wants a remastered of the original four dot hacks. But I found this thing from GameFAQs. This is from 2012, and I just want to read it off and just show that people in Bandai or whoever don't understand what fan wants. We don't want these anime brawlers, or we want them to slow down on them at least. But let me just read this off. So it seems like there's a rumor slipped under the radar, but recently Bandai Namco filed a trademark worldwide for something called Last Recollection. The title is very close and similar naming conventions Bandai Namco used for the upcoming up to and including the Dot Hack Last Recode collection. What is so funny about this? This was 2 years ago, and somebody was speculation that because of a similar name to the re-release of Dot Hack GU, it was Last Recollection. What is hilarious for me is this was the name for the new, as we know, Sword Art game now. And it feels like Bandai slipped the ball when you have people making this kind of assumption, because it means that people really want it. And it's like, I'm not dissing on the Sword Art game coming out and being a different take on how the Art game is being portrayed, but it just shows that I don't think that was a wise idea for the trademark, because it was such a similar name convention to something you already released, and people want a remake of the original.
Yeah. Well, Lost Recollection was the previous one before the one that just got released, and it's they dropped the ball on that fucking shit, dude.
Yeah, and it's just wild to me. What do you think of that, Dylan?
Yeah, it's just a case of just management needs to be done better.
Am I saying that anime brawlers need to be stopped completely? No, I do think like one every so often is fine, but it being the only thing you're doing for anime games is it's stupid. Stop, please.
Yeah, it's like, I want, like, this series might be better as, like, a Devil May Cry style combo slasher, or, like,
Like,
or some games might be
did you
better as a 2D action platformer.
did you not learn your lesson from how the JJK game went?
When done
Right? Yeah. It just
correctly!
The JJK game was fucking awful.
For example, you should
But
have companies such as Wenza do it, who work for Niz America to make Assault Spire, their current Might Reina game that's coming out soon. They do really good styles of those.
but
Also, so going back to it, and another like form of mismanagement in a lot of ways. So CyberConnect 2 confirms a new dot hack game is in the works. Okay, this was in 23 of last year. So March 12, 2023 is when this was updated, just to give context. But this was an update. The news recently broke that CyberConnect 2 CEO Hiroshi I'm going to try to say this name right, Matsuyama, was in fact joking about another entry in the Dot series being in active development.
are you fucking serious?
I'm sorry, but it's like you see the outcry for this and you make a joke, and then you go and you produce games nobody asks for, in my opinion. Yes, people ask for a Demon Slayer game, but I don't. The majority of us are tired of these anime brawlers. They're so repetitive. It's not fun. It feels like, and the best way I can put it, going back to like Sparking Zero, because I know a lot of people are going to bring that up and like, well, how can you enjoy Sparking Zero but not enjoy these anime brawlers? And it's like, Dragon Ball was always built in the style of being that, and we do get other games that aren't just in the style of being an arena brawler. But the reason Sparking Zero was so nice is Dragon Ball hasn't had a typical anime brawler like that, unless you count Raging Blast, which again was a PS3 360 game. But we hadn't had an actual return to form since 2007.
We
Put that
haven't.
in mind.
It's been so long since we've had that style of Budokai Tenkaichi that it's so nice to see it come back, because it is something in Dragon Ball that was, in terms of Dragon Ball games, that's always been loved. There is a Budokai 4 that actually exists. That was a mod. I think it was a mod for Budokai 3 that kept that series going, and still to this day, so many people played it. And when we got the Sparking Zero talks, so many people were happy, because it's been so long since we've got anything for that series.
Yeah, and the only way I see that Sparking Zero, and just the Budokai series as a whole, is able to get a pass on that is because it is actively a series that is made with such passion and attention for the Dragon Ball series as a whole.
Well, and what also makes it unique is the unbalance of the game. So, like when you look at Demon Slayer and stuff like that, they're balanced almost to a T. Where yes, characters have different move sets in the style of the animations they perform, not button presses. I want that to be known, but they are relatively equal in power in a lot of ways. Whereas the Budokai games, yes, you can beat somebody with Hercule, but you gotta work for it. You actually genuinely have to work for it. And it makes it more unique and fun because it's asking you to fight an uphill battle when you do something like that.
And it's,
Yes,
in my opinion, more rewarding in that case, because it's rewarding you for doing an actual good job on taking on these challenges. Because an example you could use is the story. People have been kind of saying about the Grade A Vegeta fight and the Vegito fight that you do with Goku Black story. I need to say personally, I did not find that fight that bad, but that's just me. I feel like the Grade A Vegeta fight was a bit more annoying, but it's the reason it being difficult. It's rewarding for beating it and doing so well, and it makes you actually feel good about learning, getting better at a game, and finally beating that hill that you've been trying to climb for a bit.
Yeah, and
Right, most definitely.
yeah, and actually, I've been reading more into this lately. Sparking Zero is actually more internally balanced in ways that other games not normally balanced. Actually, if you look into how the ranked features work, because actually, as it turns out, the battle point system in terms of characters, that is a way of self balancing the game that they implemented. Do you go with heavy hitters that they only have maybe one or two of, or do you go with weaker hitters but you have more chance to win through having just multiple health pools? And it's not just that. There's also the fact that actually picking a fusion outright is weaker than fusing mid-match because you don't get the buffs.
Same with transformations. I believe transformations add permanent buffs to you.
Yep. Yeah, so there is actually an internal self-balancing the game has that I think has been a thing since the beginning in the Budokai series that other games just don't have.
Right. It's wild. It's absolutely interesting that we constantly are in this perpetual cycle of wanting something unique and not getting it until it feels like we're so drained from wanting something.
Yeah. I will say, just to go back to the original game that started at this point, Demon Slayer, unfortunately, that is one of the few anime brawlers that has done better than most. I don't like thinking about it, but it probably means we probably are going to end up getting a second one of that. So if you don't like anime brawlers, be prepared to see possibly another anime brawler, Demon Slayer, continuing that series, because that's how they did it with Naruto, and it feels like they're going to do it with Demon Slayer, as much as I don't want them to.
Right, most definitely.
Dimps, where's my Sonic Advance remakes and my Sonic Rush 3?
Bring back Sonic Battle.
You saw the remix I sent you, right?
Yeah, no, it's really good.
I know. Actually, there is the fan game that someone made, which is a Dragon Ball Fighter style 2D fighter for the Sonic series, and it is so good. I need to send it over to you.
All right, but I think that's a good point to stop on the anime brawlers and go to Christian's second choice, the one that's probably gonna be the biggest one. Oh boy.
So, my second game is going to be an extremely controversial one in a lot of ways. And I want to preface by I think it is an outright fantastic game in a lot of areas, but it heavily disappointed me. And it's a game I had waited for years after being introduced not only to this company, but also the franchise it's a part of. And it will be Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. So, where do I start? I think I'll start with the story. It's the lightest and it's usually the part that is the most meaningless in a lot of ways for this game. But it has such an interesting premise that I think hurts it. That you are very special to the story, and I will say I will go into spoilers for the story, at least for this game. And it, I think, fumbles the bag in so many ways with how it approaches why you are the character you are and how the game treats you as said character. So it tries to hold and make itself like an old Elder Scrolls game, but also portray it in a new light. So in older Elder Scrolls games, you are almost a glorified NPC in a lot of ways, stuck in a battle bigger than your character. And this game tries to start in a similar manner, which leads you on a greater cause, on becoming the Dragonborn. And I think that hurts the game. In the story compartment, where it makes it less interesting, then it tries to be a generic fantasy story instead of what made, in my opinion, Morrowind and Oblivion so great in their stories, where you're just there. But Skyrim does this, and as the story progresses, it starts off, in my opinion, really strong and falters about halfway, and it starts showing the cracks. And one of the things that it showed to me was your character is meaningless in numerous ways, because you find out the people that actually fought the main villain of the game, we'll say, Alduin, were not Dragonborn. They were able to send him further in the future. Okay, interesting. So it doesn't make you fully feel useless. It just makes you go, okay, so I'm the only person that can truly kill Alduin. So let's get skipped straight to the final boss. After you beat Alduin, you find out that you cannot absorb his soul like you can other dragons, and all it does is fling him further into the future. He will come back. And they reiterate that to you. 2 reasons that falls flat. It takes all urgency away that you had. It makes you feel like the only reason you were special was because you could do something innate that people had took time to learn. And then the other thing is, it makes Alduin a weaker villain because there is no way to kill him. He'll just always be there. He'll always return. There is no proper way to kill him. And I think that hurts the story, because it's like, oh, cool, when will Alduin show up? And I don't agree with that story writing, because it makes me question, oh, is this Elder Scrolls game? Alduin going to return? And I don't think that's good for the story's health. The other core problem I have with it is the choice making it had. So Skyrim has really robust choices in the sense that it gives you a lot to choose from. Now, my problem quarrels with how it's handled. There are not a lot of meaningful choices that actually feel like your choice means something. And one of the biggest examples I have for that is the civil war that is happening in Skyrim. Your final choice has you either side with the Stormcloaks or the Imperial Army. And now the problem is, all that does with your choice is change one location to now represent the location you chose and change the Jarl. And I don't think that's good, because it just feels like your choice was a reskin. And it doesn't feel like there's urgency in how they implanted it. Because it's, again, like the story starts off extremely strong, but makes it feel weak in how it executes it. And I mean, just going to, for example, Fallout 3. Fallout 3 has so many choice and outcomes where there's an ending for each choice for certain side quests that made you feel like, was I a dick? Was I an asshole? Did I do something good? Or was I just middling? And it makes you feel like your choices in some way affected that person or that group of people. Whereas I feel like Skyrim fumbles that ability and choice and sequence. And I will bring up examples that I think pull off better RPG mechanics that Skyrim failed on, new and old. I do want to emphasize that some of these are new and some of these are old. But the other thing I think it fumbles on is build crafting. So, yes, you can upgrade all of your stats and skills in other games in Morrowind and Oblivion, but I still feel like there was more urgency on how your character was built, where your character couldn't maybe be a complete jack of all trades. Whereas in Skyrim, it feels like it's built that way. It also starts funneling you in a certain way early on if you're not careful, where the most overpowered option is stealth and bow. And it just doesn't feel good. Once you realize that is the best way to start going, you kind of don't want to pull yourself away, because in all honesty, unlike Oblivion and Morrowind, where I feel like the combat was a little bit more tactical, Morrowind having a dice rolling mechanic built into it for your hit system, and then Oblivion, you felt like you had to be a little bit more careful on how, like, weapons you chose, what fights to get in, do you have the right materials, is your MP good, in like certain areas that you're going in. So it just felt like there was more choices in how your character had to be built, because you might not be able to do a certain fight. Whereas Skyrim, I felt like I could throw myself headlong into a lot of fights. And it just doesn't feel good. But it also, my character just felt too uniform into the class I was building. And I don't like that, because it doesn't feel like I'm trying to make a barbarian or something like that. It wants me to try to be everything, whereas I'm playing a medieval RPG and I want to have those kind of choices. I am role-playing, but being able to do everything just doesn't make it as fun. Granted, it takes a little bit to get there, but I don't want to fully get there. I want it to be like, okay, I'm great with a two-handed weapon, but I'm not great with a bow. I want to start up another character and be good with a bow. I want the option of replayability being that option. I don't want to feel like the ultimate life form. I think it's cool, but most of those games, it doesn't feel like you ever get that way. You're just good in that one category in a lot of ways. Now, some of the examples I wanted to use, I want to use Dragon Dogma 2 at first, because I think, yes, you can unlock and build craft really well and have multiple classes on one character. But how the game approaches it is interesting because you can't just switch that class out of the gate. You have to go and actually to a town and switch it yourself. And then you're locked into that class until you want to switch to another class. But it rewards you for building that class and maybe not wanting to switch off of it later on. So that, I think it does extremely well in how it chooses for the build crafting. But on the other end, I want to go to the Dragon Age series. So we'll start with Dragon Age Origins, where I absolutely love the choices the game gives you and actually gives you so many meaningful ways to approach the game through story choice alone. And it makes me feel like my choices genuinely matter and that I'm actually affecting the world in a unique way. Same with Inquisition and 2. And it's like, why I go to these games more than Skyrim, because Skyrim, where it feels like an RPG in a sandbox, these games feel like a world that I'm actually in having effect in. And it's so interesting that similar styles in medieval RPGs, but it feels like one is more about being in the world than actually affecting the world. Where Elder Scrolls usually is about your NPC is unintentionally affecting the world in ways that you wouldn't understand because you're a glorified NPC in a lot of ways. And then the last game I want to bring up is Witcher 3. A game that I think is the perfect balance of build crafting and then also the effect you have and the choices you have in the world. Whereas I also think it gets similar things that I think Skyrim has worked well in ways, which is it's open world. I think Skyrim has a wonderful world to explore, and why I say it's a great sandbox game is because that world is just so fun to explore and be in. But at Witcher 3, I feel like I'm actually exploring a world and uncovering things and actually doing things that not only benefit Geralt's story, but also strengthen the story and the world he's in. And Skyrim strengthens the lore and aspects of the world I'm in, but it doesn't feel like I'm affecting the world I'm in. And I just think Skyrim falls flat in so many areas that it's such a good game, but it's so disappointing on what it could have been. And why I'm so excited and nervous for Elder Scrolls 6, but I have a little hope, and I know this is going to be a hell of a controversial take, but Starfield is the RPG I want from Bethesda. It's the choices, and you can do almost everything inside with everything in the game, but I do like how my choices affect things, even if they're minor. It has more consequence to how it's doing things than I think Skyrim does. And it makes me wonder what Elder Scrolls 6 could be if they take what they learned with Starfield and apply that into a sandbox structure. And please make combat better. I do want to emphasize that. I don't think Skyrim's combat is great. It wasn't great when it released. But it just reinforces this idea that Skyrim could have been more. And what's sad is there is a little game that released close to around the same time. I think it was the year after. Let me see. Skyrim came out in 2011. Let me see something.
I mean, I was gonna say this is definitely like what I would say. You know how a lot of people say that series end up getting a case of like series fatigue. I'd say what's currently happening with a lot of the Bethesda games is not really series fatigue, but more like series drought. To where there's just so long between game releases, people tend to sort of forget what are the main driving forces and concepts behind the games, like the Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and stuff like that. To where it just ends up getting lost in time in terms of what is the main driving force behind them.
Right.
No,
So
another thing that something we said about Nintendo, Nintendo is timing for releasing a game. They're gonna take so long with releasing the new game. Like, how many versions of Skyrim are we up to now? Got the PS4 version, the PS5, the anniversary one, the one with all the DLC. I say
VR,
PS5 because we got a PS5 and PS4 remaster for both.
even
VR,
then, we got,
the
Yeah,
VR ones where the meta is just putting pots on people's heads and shooting fire out of both your hands.
I love.
well, if you remember, but right after Skyrim released and all the DLC came out, we got the Legendary Edition.
Yeah.
And then it was the Special Edition, then the VR Edition, and then we got the, what is the new edition?
I think it's the anniversary edition.
Yeah, Anniversary Edition, and it's like,
And then
okay,
for PlayStation, we've got two separate versions of the special edition, which is PS4 and PS5 now.
And the Switch.
yeah, and it, but and here's the thing, it's like I think this game is a great beginner's RPG. I will always stand by that I think this was the game that got people into this style of RPG, and it's so worth it because it made it so meaningful. But it's so interesting to me that this game has become this beloved thing when games that are getting dogged on nowadays for the problems they have. Skyrim had so many, and people forget the PS3 version was absolutely broken on release. Not only was it broken, but they couldn't add the DLC right away. It wasn't until the Legendary Edition that PS3 got the DLC. And it's like wild to me that a game like Cyberpunk, which I think is a far superior RPG in so many categories, but something like
canceled.
Cyberpunk released in a similar structure with crashes and bugs that it gets bashed, but a game like Skyrim is so beloved, and I heard so many reviewers talking about it, and reviewers I actually care about and like, and one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, because I listen to them so much, when I hear them talking about things, it's like interesting because it shows that as a medium, gaming has more differential takes and more unique takes, and I don't think we should 100% be mind boggled to the option of choosing an opinion instead of forming our own opinion. And I think gaming has gotten this bad state, and one of the reasons we wanted to create this podcast was to show that we can all have different opinions. We can all say something is good that disappointed us, but we all have different takes, and we should all form different takes instead of just bashing and hating and disagreeing in a negative way. We should have disagreements, but it should be in a positive light. For example, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it came out and people were so against it, and even if you said you liked the game, people were so quick to say that you didn't have good judgment on games, and I don't agree with it. The gaming culture has become so toxic that we wanted to start this podcast to show gaming can be positive. I know we opened up with games being good but disappointing, but it's just to show that we still found good in them. That gaming is this medium that, whereas a movie can just be bad and we can all agree that it was bad, gaming has so many layers where something like the story could be good and the gameplay be bad, or the gameplay can be good and the story be bad. And I think we just we're, as gamers, we've become too entitled and too quick to judge something on either looks, gameplay, or story. Where it should be, what is the game fun? Did the game tell a good story? And I want us to be able to judge a game on more merits than just looks, feel, and experience. It needs to be more than that. And I think that games also need to be judged fairly in a lot of ways. We'll get to later subjects, but a game I absolutely love that got harshly judged and now a studio closure has happened because of it is Elix 1 and 2. I think they are fantastic RPGs, and they are definitely B games, but they're talked about in a AAA manner and talked about in a way that I don't agree with, and I think there needs to be how we review games needs to be done differently in a way that understanding that a game can be good and not be a AAA game or be a AAA budget, but we shouldn't look at it in a AAA budget. And I get it, games are now becoming more expensive, consoles are becoming more expensive, we need to be wiser with our money. But it's why doing your own research, understanding your own taste comes a long way. Forming your opinion around someone else's opinion does not benefit you when you might like something that somebody else didn't. Like I said, Skyrim might be your favorite game, Demon Slayer might be your favorite game, you know, Mad Max might be your favorite game. You know, all these games that we have talked about that are good but disappointed us might be your favorite game. But that doesn't change the fact that to us it disappointed us. But we can have this conversation because gaming is a revolving door that is always evolving. And we need to be more productive, and I feel like we're not being productive enough. We're regressing in the way we talk to developers. We are regressing in how we talk to each other. And I think that we need to look in the mirror and have these discussions. Because older games, all of these games we talked about, some recent, a lot older, they have their flaws, they have their problems, and can still be enjoyed. But holding them up against newer games will never make progression. We need to understand that some of us aren't developers, some of us are not people in the industry that understand how games might need to be made or even need to be worked on. But we need to be able to enjoy things and take ourselves not as seriously and improve the way the market is, but also being productive. I know this sounds a little preachy, but at the same time, I have been in the video game world for years now. It has been my biggest release, and there's just so much negativity between how people talk about Xbox, how people talk about Palworld and Nintendo's lawsuit, how people talk about Sony. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, we live in a day and age where gaming is at its highest peak in a lot of categories. And it feels like no one can be happy. Or we have a game like Baldur's Gate 3 that just absolutely destroys how people perceive games. Baldur's Gate 3 should be the quality mark. But not every company can meet that quality mark because Baldur's Gate 3 was that anomaly. It's a fantastic game. But then you have a game like, which was my game of the year, Alan Wake 2, and it still hasn't recouped money, and people want gaming to be good and be an art form and stuff like that, but don't support something like that, but go support Resident Evil 4's remake. Now, I'm not saying don't go do either, but I'm saying you have to vote for your wallet, and the more we vote for our wallet in the wrong way, the more we will get our Apex Legends, our Fortnites, our stuff like that, where it's like it doesn't feel like the industry is moving forward, and the games that should be moving the industry forward we're too critical on, and we should be a little bit more open, so maybe we can get new ideas.
Yeah, that is just, just everything you said is a sentiment that a lot of us in our own group, and also a lot of people that we have been seeing in the industry and the community at large has been feeling as of late. In terms of how just games are being treated, gamers are being treated, and how just people that view the medium from the outside in have just been treating our type of medium as a whole. In terms of there's just lack of respect for just everyone across the board, just not being shared anymore. We're regressing in terms of realizing that people use this medium as a way to have fun, to escape from their just daily lives, just have fun once in a while. Just all of it is about having fun. And a lot of that is just being lost. And it really shouldn't.
And like I said, I'll go back. I know it was a little preachy, but at the same time, it's like we had this. We came up with this discussion as our first episode to be about the games that disappoint us, but are still good games because it should be able to be said, even if it's a controversial take. I know I picked Skyrim as my second game, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with it, and that is perfectly fine. That is so fine. I don't care if that is your game of the year. That is fine. The game I was going to bring up to say that I think was the better game of the year, and not only that, has the better build crafting and technically world agency, but Dark Souls 1 came out September 22nd, 2011. Elder Scrolls Skyrim came out November 10th, 2011. 2 months apart in a day. And I think that while Dark Souls got the love and now has become the bigger franchise, I think Skyrim is being looked upon so fondly with a microscope that I think if we went back and actually thought about it in a lot of ways, it is a game that I think could have been better. And that's my opinion, and it disappointed me. It did take me 60 hours to realize that I was disappointed at Skyrim when I first played it back in middle school. But it still didn't mean it wasn't a good game. And there are so many games that are great games that disappointed people because they had higher standards for it, or were thinking it would be one thing and another. And I think we need to be able to have these talks. I think that gamers need to be able to have a reasonable talk on something that might be beloved and have people look at things in a more unique way.
I think that is pretty well said, brother. Also, apologies for being quiet for a minute. A friend of ours, whose name is Pip, messaged me as having some technical issues with console stuff, so I was responding to that. So I wasn't 100% listening there for a minute because I was trying to figure out what was going on that end. I don't know. I'll sort that out after, we're done recording all this. But, no, I think that is, like I said, it might sound preachy, but I think it was said really well.
How dare you name the next guest?
So,
I apologize for that. I was getting spammed about it.
Okay.
But any final comments on it, Dylan?
None major, really. Just everything is well said, and I look forward to continuing working on this project.
Most definitely. Yeah. Now, before we wrap it up, we came up with a little idea that we want to do at the beginning of the month, and we will talk about it at the end of the month. But we have picked out 2 games apiece, and I have put them on a wheel. I will share my screen so we can actually see this.
He says start of the month as it is halfway through the goddamn month.
Well, and to be fair, that's the next time we'll spin it. So close to about the same time. So when I say start of the month, I mean when we start our episode.
Oh God!
And depending on.
Yeah, he's good.
But I thought it would be a good idea to do this to give, because all 3 of us might share similar takes on games, or even play similar games. But it's also to reimagine and relook at games in a way, in a new light. So we will be playing this for a month, one of these games for a month straight, and then we will be talking about it when that month is up. So here we go.
Spin the wheel.
Rattle me bones.
So
Yes,
this is
it is El Dante de Extermino Demonios, my friend.
And honestly, I think this is very fitting. So, one thing I like how we did this, and if you look, we have several games that are beloved. Actually, I take it back. We have 2 games that are highly regarded. So I have Signalis, and Dylan, you have
Anno Mutationum.
Right. Those 2 games are beloved. Everything else would be considered a disappointing game. So it actually fits the theme of the video that we got DMC Reboot. So we will be playing DMC Reboot for about a month, and then we will, on the episode on probably around November this time, we will be talking about what we think about the reboot of DMC.
It's been so long since I've played it. It is such. I know there's people who don't like it, but to me, it's such a meme.
It's such an interesting game because it really fits the theme of this video, which is good game that disappointed us.
That's also
Even though
that's also the reason I kind of suggested it, because just like I also was trying to think of something that would fit the theme of it, because I have said this before in the past when it initially released. It's a good hack and slash game. It's not a good Devil May Cry game, but I will save that whole talk for next time.
I actually have a counter argument for that, but I also will save it for the next video because it's really interesting on how the games I picked. One phenomenal game that I think needs to be talked about more, but Star Ocean was a game that I thought was extremely good for the franchise. Did it have a couple of problems? Yes, but I don't think it was disappointing. But most people that were Star Ocean fans did find it disappointing. So it's a really cool introduction on how we perceive these style games. So I can't wait to talk about it, honestly, because I think it's going to add quite a bit of interesting depth to our conversation.
Yeah, and of the 2 games I picked, Anno Mutationum, which is a beloved game it's a beloved indie game that a lot of people thought would make a big splash, but did, and Transformers Devastation, which is also ties into the fact of really good game. People love the game as well, but the disappointing part is that it is just so short, but it really packs a lot in that shortness.
And the fact that it was delisted.
And the fact that it was delisted.
And Gotham Knights was the other one I suggested. I know, again, it's one some people didn't enjoy. I personally enjoyed it. I find it funny that one of the features is that nothing bad happens to them, but you can hit civilians just like as Red Hood or any of the other characters, and it's like, it's funny. But that was one of the my other options.
But yeah, honestly, I think that's a good place to wrap up for today. I want to thank both of you for not only helping me start this, but us doing this today. It's been real fun, and to everyone out there that does watch this or later on or whenever, we are learning. This is not only our first episode, but we do want feedback. We do want to improve, and this was a good way to test on what needs to be done. So if you've made it this far, I hope you enjoyed. I do hope that you do leave critiques down below, because we do want to improve and have great discussions.
Put us in the Homelander incinerator.
But this is us signing off. This was Gaming with Passion. Take it easy, and I'll talk to you guys later.
See you guys.
Goodbye, everybody.
Time to die a bunch of times. Yay!